The glow from my phone was the only light in the room. A blue-white rectangle painting my face, my thumb numb from the endless scroll. Up, up, up. Another picture of someone's perfect vacation. Another political argument in a comment section. Another video of a cat falling off a chair. This was my life after 6 p.m. A cycle of digital noise to drown out the silence of apartment 7B. My job was a spreadsheet marathon, my social life was a series of little red notification dots, and my dinner was whatever didn't require more than 90 seconds in the microwave. I tossed the phone onto the cushion beside me. It landed with a soft thud. I stared at the ceiling, at the faint water stain from the upstairs neighbors that looked vaguely like a sad clown. My stomach grumbled. Not real hunger, just boredom. I thought about the commercial I'd seen last week, wedged between a car insurance ad and the local news. Some new brand of chips. Wasabi ginger flavor. The ad was stupid, a bunch of 20-somethings on a rooftop, laughing way too hard. But the thought of that sharp, spicy crunch stuck with me. I picked up my phone again, just to have something to do. I opened the browser, ready to type in some other mindless search. Before I could, a banner ad unfurled at the top of the screen. Bright green and pink. A picture of the exact bag of wasabi ginger chips. Jesus! I muttered to the empty room. Fucking phone's always listening. I closed the ad, a familiar flicker of annoyance passing through me. Privacy was dead. The corporations were camping out in our living rooms. Whatever. I was too tired to care. I put the phone down for good this time and closed my eyes, the image of the stupid chip still burned into the back of my eyelids. 5 minutes passed. Maybe 10. I was drifting, halfway between consciousness and a nap, when the sound cut through the quiet. Ding dong! My eyes snapped open. The doorbell. I didn't move. I hadn't ordered anything. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ever. My circle of friends had shrunk to a few group chats, and my family lived 3 states away. It was probably a delivery for the wrong apartment. It would go away. Ding dong? Louder this time. Insistent. With a groan, I heaved myself off the sofa. Annoyance was my primary emotion. Some idiot couldn't read a damn apartment number. I stomped to the door, my bare feet cold on the laminate flooring. I didn't even bother with the peephole. I just twisted the deadbolt and yanked the door open, a sharp, "You got the wrong," already on my lips. There was no one there. I poked my head out, looking left, then right. The hallway was a long, sterile tunnel of beige walls and identical brown doors, lit by humming fluorescent lights. Empty. Silent. Then I looked down. On the welcome mat, a single brown paper grocery bag stood upright. Not a plastic delivery bag from Grubhub or Postmates, a regular old-school grocery bag. I could see the logo of the Food Mart from 3 blocks away. A prickle of something. Not fear, just intense weirdness. Went up my spine. I hesitated for a second, then knelt down and peered inside. My breath caught in my throat. Sitting on top of a few other items was a large, crinkly bag of wasabi ginger potato chips, the exact one from the ad, the exact one I was just thinking about. My mind raced, trying to find a logical path. A prank? I didn't have friends who pulled pranks. A mistake? What were the odds? I reached into the bag, my hand closing around the chips. Beneath them, I felt a piece of paper. I pulled it out. It was a receipt. A standard flimsy thermal paper receipt from the Food Mart. I scanned the items. The chips. A bottle of Coke. A pack of gum. And at the bottom, the total. Next to it, in neat printed letters, were 2 words. Paid in full. There was no name. No delivery service info. No note. Just a bag of groceries I didn't order, containing the one specific, random thing I had silently craved just minutes earlier. This wasn't a coincidence. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was wrong. My eyes shot to the end of the hallway again. Still empty. But it didn't feel empty anymore. I felt watched. I snatched the bag, backed into my apartment, and slammed the door shut. The sound echoed in the sudden quiet. I twisted the deadbolt, my hand slick with a thin film of sweat. I heard the solid thunk as the bolt slid into place. Then I engaged the chain. A useless little piece of metal, but it made me feel better. I dropped the bag on the kitchen counter. For a moment, I just stared at it. It looked alien in my apartment. A piece of the outside world that shouldn't be here. Who? How? Did I say something out loud before? Did a neighbor overhear? No. The walls were thick. I was sure I had only thought it. My phone buzzed on the sofa. The sound made me jump, a jolt of pure adrenaline. It felt different from a normal notification. It felt predatory. I walked over slowly, as if approaching a snake. The screen was lit up with a message from an unknown number. Just a string of digits, no contact name. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the screen and read the text. Enjoy them while they're fresh. My blood went cold. I dropped the phone on the couch as if it were hot. My heart was a drum against my ribs now, fast and hard. He wasn't just listening. He knew my address. He brought me things. And he was watching me. Right now, he had to be. He knew I'd gotten the bag. He knew I was inside. My instincts screamed. I scrambled to the living room window, yanking the blinds to the side and peering down into the street 7 floors below. The city was alive. A river of headlights. Tiny figures walking on the sidewalks, heads down, buried in their own worlds. A man walking a dog. A couple laughing. A group of kids on skateboards. Who was it? Which one? Was he in a car? In the building across the street with a pair of binoculars? The anonymity of the crowd was terrifying. He could be anyone. He could be everyone. There was no one looking up, no one suspicious, no one out of place. I let the blinds fall shut. My back was pressed against the wall, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My safe space, my little concrete box in the sky, suddenly felt like a glass cage. Every corner held a new possibility of threat. Then it happened. Click. The sound came from the TV. A sharp electric pop. My head snapped toward it. The huge black screen, which had been off, flickered to life. Not to a channel, not to a snowy static, just a screen of pure, deep black. I didn't breathe. I watched, frozen, as a single white dot appeared in the center of the screen. It blinked, and then it started to write, a cursor, typing out a message in a clean sans serif font. NOTDOWNTHERE. Not down there. A scream got stuck in my throat, a choked, pathetic sound. It wasn't someone across the street. It was closer. My mind exploded. It's inside. It's in the network. It's in my Wi-Fi. It's in the goddamn walls. No worse. The sense was a direct reply to my action. A reply to me looking out the window. The only way it could know that was, my eyes darted around the room. The dark corner by the bookshelf. The gap between the armchair and the wall. The shadows in the short hallway leading to my bedroom. My mind populated them all with a figure, a shape, a pair of eyes. I was exposed. Completely and utterly exposed. Panic took over. I needed a weapon. Something. Anything. My eyes landed on the old aluminum baseball bat I kept propped in the corner. A relic from a company softball league I'd quit years ago. I launched myself across the room, my fingers closing around the cool, worn metal of the handle. It felt heavy, solid, real. I spun around, my back hitting the wall hard. I held the bat up in both hands, my knuckles white. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Show yourself, you son of a bitch!" Silence. The letters on the TV screen glowed, taunting me. My gaze swept the room from left to right, again and again. My ears strained, trying to catch the sound of a floorboard creaking, a quiet breath. Anything. There was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the frantic, wild pounding of my own heart. I was alone. I had to be alone. This was a hack, a sophisticated, terrifying hack. The TV screen flashed once, bright white, and then went dead. The sudden plunge back into near darkness was jarring. The only light was the ambient glow of the city filtering through the blinds. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. It pressed in on me. I stood there for a full minute, bat raised, muscles screaming with tension, sweat dripping down my temples. My breathing was ragged, loud in the stillness. Was it over? A joke? A sick, twisted prank that had run its course? BZZZT. My phone. On the couch. The vibration sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. It was him. It had to be him. I didn't want to look. I wanted to smash the phone with the bat, stomp it into 1,000 pieces. But I couldn't. I had to know. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered the bat. I took one step, then another, my eyes still scanning the shadows. I reached the couch and looked down at the screen. Another message. But this one wasn't a text. It was a picture. A photo attachment. It was still downloading. A small circle, spinning, spinning, spinning. My thumb hovered over the notification. My whole body screamed at me not to open it. Don't look. Just run. Get out of the apartment. Get out now. But I couldn't move. My curiosity was a physical thing, a hook in my gut, pulling me in. The download finished. The thumbnail popped into view. My world stopped. It wasn't a picture of my home. It wasn't a threat written on a wall. It was a picture of me. From behind. The photo was sharp. Perfectly in focus. It showed the back of my head, my messy brown hair, the curve of my neck, the gray collar of my t-shirt. I was standing, holding the baseball bat, my back pressed against the wall. It was a picture of me, not 5 seconds ago. It was taken from an angle. From above. From somewhere inside the room. From the dark corner by the bookshelf I had stared at just a moment before, the one I had sworn was empty. I didn't move. My muscles were locked, screaming in protest. The aluminum bat felt like it had fused to my palms, a cold, heavy extension of my own bones. The image on the phone screen was burned into my retinas, the back of my head. The gray t-shirt, the wall behind me, the angle. An impossible angle. It was taken from inside the room, from the dark corner by the bookshelf. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild animal trapped in a cage. My breath was a shallow, ragged thing. I couldn't tear my eyes from the phone, but I couldn't look at it either. The picture was proof, a declaration. I am here. I am always here. I see you when you think you are safe. Slowly, like an old man, I swiveled my head toward the corner. It was just a corner, a meeting of two beige walls, shadowed and still. Empty. It had to be empty. But the photo didn't lie. The rest of the night wasn't sleep. It was a siege. I didn't return to the couch. I slid down the wall where I stood, my back pressed hard against the drywall, the bat laid across my lap. I sat on the cold laminate floor, a sentinel in my own prison. Every creak of the building was an approaching footstep. Every distant siren was a warning meant for me. Every hum from the refrigerator was a breath being held in the next room. I watched the slivers of city light shift and crawl across the floor as the hours passed. I watched the shadows twist into monstrous shapes and then dissolve back into nothing. I didn't blink. I didn't dare. When the first gray hint of dawn bled through the blinds, it didn't bring relief. It just brought a different kind of light to the same terror. The threat didn't vanish with the darkness. It just became harder to see. My eyes burned from exhaustion. My body ached. Logic, desperate and weak, tried to claw its way back into my brain. It had to be a hack. Some sick, brilliant hacker. They got into my Wi-Fi, my phone, the TV. The grocery delivery, a social engineering trick. They found my data, my address. The camera that took the picture, they must have hacked a device. My laptop? But it was closed. My phone? It was in my hand. It didn't make sense. But a hacker was a person behind a screen, miles away. That was a reality I could almost live with. A ghost in the machine. A ghost in the machine was better than a man in the corner. I had to move. I had to pretend to be a human being. I used the bat to push myself up, my joints cracking in protest. My first destination was the kitchen. Coffee. A normal action. A ritual to ward off the madness. As I walked, my gaze slid past the front door, and I stopped. Something was wrong. The welcome mat. My cheap brown welcome mat was crooked, just by an inch. Pushed out of place as if the door had scraped over it. I never left it like that. I'm particular about stupid things like that. A cold dread, sharp and familiar now, prickled my skin. I kneeled. The rough fibers of the mat scratched my fingers. I pushed it back into its perfect rectangular position. And that's when I saw it. Tucked right at the base of the door, caught in the narrow gap between the door and the frame, was a tiny black object. It glinted under the dim light of the hallway fixture. It was no bigger than a grain of rice. I picked it up with 2 fingers. It was hard, plastic. A circuit board on one side, a minuscule lens on the other. A camera. A tiny, self-contained spy camera. The air left my lungs in a rush. I understood instantly. It wasn't a hack. Not just a hack. He had been here. He had stood right outside my door, slid this thing underneath. It had been stuck there, seeing everything. It had watched me open the door to the empty hallway. It had watched me take the groceries. It had watched me look out the window. And when I went for the bat, he was worried I'd find it, so he took his picture, the final proof. Then he took it out. He retrieved it. But why? Why remove it? My phone vibrated on the counter where I'd left it. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent apartment. I flinched so hard the spy cam fell from my trembling fingers and clattered onto the floor. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't look away from my phone. Another message from the unknown number. I walked toward it, each step feeling heavy, reluctant. My thumb shook as I swiped the screen open. That one broke. I'm using another. My blood turned to ice. Another. My head snapped up. My eyes darted around the apartment, not looking for a man in the shadows anymore, but for a tiny, black, unblinking eye. Where? The smoke detector on the ceiling? A fake screw and a light switch? A pinhole in the wall? My laptop! I lunged for my bedroom. The laptop was on my desk, lid shut. I always shut it. I flipped it open. The screen flared to life, showing my desktop. And next to the built-in webcam at the top of the screen, a single, tiny point of white light glowed. It was on. The camera was active. I never turned it on. I put a piece of black tape over it months ago. The tape was gone, peeled away. My own face stared back at me from a small window on the screen, a reflection from the photo booth application that was now open. A face I barely recognized, pale, eyes wide with terror, mouth agape. He was watching me, through my own computer, right now. The text wasn't a threat, it was an update, a status report. Panic made my thoughts run jagged and sharp. He was here. He was inside my apartment last night. He peeled the tape off my laptop. He moved through my space while I was on the couch, lost in my phone. The thought was so violating it made me want to vomit. I slammed the laptop shut. The little white light vanished, but the feeling of being watched didn't. He said another, plural. My eyes scanned my room, the small black box on my dresser, a cheap security camera I bought on Amazon after a neighbor's car was broken into. I'd set it up to watch my bedroom door, an extra layer of useless security. I hadn't even looked at the feed in weeks. I remembered turning it off through the app. But right now, on the front of the device, a tiny green LED was blinking. A slow, steady rhythm, the sign for recording and connected to Wi-Fi. He wasn't just in the corner. He wasn't just outside the door. He was in my smoke detector, my TV, my laptop, my security camera. He had built a nest of eyes all around me. My entire apartment, my sanctuary, was his personal panopticon. I was an exhibit in a one-man zoo. Then I heard it. Click. It wasn't a digital sound. It wasn't from a speaker. It was a physical, mechanical sound. Soft. Close. It came from the front door. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I held my breath. Was he trying to get in? Breaking the lock? No. The sound was too small. It was the sound of metal on metal, the sound of the small, circular cover on the peephole being slid aside. Someone was at my door. Someone was looking in. I don't know what possessed me. It wasn't bravery. It was a kind of fatalistic, terrified curiosity. I had to know. I had to see. I crept out of the bedroom, my bare feet making no sound on the floor. I moved like a predator, my shoulders low, every sense on fire. The bat was still in the living room. I was empty-handed. I didn't care. I reached the door. My heart was a frantic drum against my sternum. I could feel the vibrations through my whole body. I leaned in, my cheek pressing against the cool wood of the door. My hands were shaking so much I had to steady one with the other as I reached for the peephole. I lowered my head, and I put my eye to the lens. An eye stared back. Not a face, Not a figure in the hallway, just an eye, magnified and distorted by the fisheye lens. It filled the entire circular frame. A pale blue iris, shot through with tiny red veins. A black, dilated pupil. It was so close I could almost feel its heat. It was unblinking, aware. We were locked together in that tiny glass world, me looking out, it looking in. For a second that stretched into an eternity, neither of us moved. The world shrank to that single, horrifying point of connection. It knew I was there. It was waiting for me. Then the eye changed. The skin around it crinkled. The eyelid tightened. It was squinting. Like it was smiling. A strangled gasp escaped my throat and I threw myself backward. Away from the door, my heel catching on the rug. I fell hard, my head cracking against the floor. Pain exploded at the back of my skull, but I barely felt it. I crab-walked backward, scrambling away from the door like it was on fire, my breath coming in ragged, ugly sobs. My back hit the opposite wall. My mind screamed, "Get out! Get out! Now!" But I had to look again. I had to know if it was real. Pushing through the dizzying pain in my head, I stumbled back to my feet, lurched toward the door, and slammed my eye against the peephole one more time. The hallway was empty. The sterile beige walls, the identical brown doors, the humming fluorescent lights. No one. Nothing. Relief tried to flood in, but it was choked off before it could start. My eyes drifted across the hall, to the door of apartment 7A, directly opposite mine. Something was written on it, in a smear of waxy, bright red. Lipstick. The letters were crude, dripping slightly. 3 words that made the floor drop out from under me. Saw you looking. My forehead hit the wall opposite the door. The sound was a dull thud, lost in the ragged noise tearing from my own throat. I stayed there, crumpled on the floor, the world a smear of beige walls and the blood-red letters burned into my vision. Saw you looking. The phrase echoed, a sing-song taunt in the dead air. It was a game. This whole thing was a game, and the rules were being written in lipstick on a stranger's door. My phone. I needed my phone. My hand scrabbled in my pocket, fingers clumsy and useless. I pulled it out, almost dropping it. The screen was a blinding white light in the dim hallway. My thumb shook so hard it took 3 tries to unlock it. Police. Call the police. It was the only sane thought left in my head, a single piece of driftwood in an ocean of panic. I fumbled through contacts, fingers too thick, too slow. I gave up and just stabbed at the keypad. 9. 1. 1. My thumb hovered over the green call button. A part of my brain screamed that it was a trap, that making the call was what he wanted, that it was the next move in his game. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed it anyway. The ringing felt endless. 1 ring. 2. 9. 1. 1. What is your emergency? The voice was a woman's, calm, bored. Someone's in my building, I blurted out, my voice a broken croak. He's harassing me. He's watching me. He was just at my door. Okay, sir, slow down. What is your address? I gave it to her, my jaw tight, my gaze locked on my front door as if I expected it to burst open. Apartment 7B. Kevin Cole. Mr. Cole, can you tell me exactly what's happening? You said someone is watching you? He's everywhere. He sent me pictures. Pictures of me inside my own apartment. He put a camera under my door. He hacked my laptop, my security camera, all of it. He was just looking through my peephole. He wrote on my neighbor's door. I was rambling, the words spilling out in a desperate, ugly torrent. I knew how I sounded. I sounded insane. There was a pause. The telltale sound of typing. Okay, Mr. Cole. Is there anyone in the apartment with you right now? No, I don't know. He was here. He must have been. I don't know where he is now. Have you been using any substances, Mr. Cole? Alcohol? Narcotics? The question was a slap in the face. Cold and dismissive. No, I'm not crazy. Listen to me. He's sending me messages from a blocked number. My anger flared, a hot spark in the cold terror. There's proof. He's real. Okay, sir. We can send a car to your location. Can you give me the number that's been contacting you? Finally, a piece of real evidence. I tapped the screen, my hands starting to steady. I pulled up the message history, the picture of the back of my head, the taunt about the broken camera. I read the number out to her, digit by digit. It felt good. It felt like I was fighting back. She was quiet for a long moment. All I could hear was the faint, static-laced hum of the open line and the frantic drumming of my own heart. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice different now, cautious, professional. I'm looking at the number you just gave me. And? I pushed. Who is it? Another beat of silence. Sir, according to our records, that phone number is registered to you, to a Mr. Kevin Cole, at your current address. The world stopped. The phone almost slipped from my hand. What? No, that's not possible. That's impossible. You have to check again. It's him. It's the stalker. I'm looking right at it, sir. The account is in your name. Her voice was laced with something now. Pity, annoyance, like I was just another crackpot wasting her time. My mind refused to accept it. It was a trick, another layer of his sick game. He didn't just hack my cameras. He'd somehow spoofed his number to look like mine. He was that good. He had to be, because the alternative was unthinkable. Before I could argue, before I could scream that she was wrong, a new sound cut through the apartment. Kevin? I froze. The voice was soft, familiar. It came from the living room, from the sleek black cylinder of the smart speaker on my entertainment center. Kevin, honey, you're worrying me again. It was my mother's voice, my mother, who had been dead for 3 years. A sound escaped my throat, a strangled animal noise. The phone fell from my grasp, clattering to the floor. The dispatcher's distant, tinny voice was swallowed by the impossible sound of my mother's. It wasn't a recording. It felt alive. The gentle disappointment in her tone, the way she always said my name when I'd forgotten to call. It was perfect. You know I don't like it when you get like this, sweetheart, she said. The lights in the apartment flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging me into near darkness, the only light coming from the city glow through the blinds. Then they all came back on at once, brighter than before. The TV screen flared to life, not on a channel but on a blue error screen. A low, distorted hiss bled from its speakers. My laptop, which I'd slammed shut in the bedroom, started playing music. A tinny, off-key version of Happy Birthday from my 7th birthday party. I remembered that day. I remembered that cheap cassette recorder. One by one, every piece of technology in my sanctuary turned on me. My phone on the floor started playing a voicemail. My dad's voice, loud and booming. Running late, kiddo. See you in a bit. The smart speaker switched from my mom's gentle chiding to a snippet of a TV show she used to love. The little security camera in the bedroom started beeping, a frantic, insistent rhythm. It was a symphony of my own life, chopped up and thrown back at me. A cacophony of ghosts. He wasn't just watching me. He had downloaded me. He owned my past. He was in my walls, in my wires, in my memories. The apartment wasn't a prison. It was a tomb, and he was rattling all the bones. He was showing me his control, showing me that even the police, my one lifeline to the real world, were useless. I scrambled back, away from the phone, away from the door. My back hit the coffee table. The aluminum bat I'd left there rolled and hit my leg. My hand closed around the cool metal, a solid, real thing in a world of digital phantoms. Amid the chaos of sounds, my mother's voice cut through again, clear and sharp from the smart speaker. But this time, the warmth was gone. It was replaced by a cold, mocking edge, a tone she had never used in her life. You think calling the cops will help? That was it. The snap. A raw scream tore out of me, full of rage and terror. Get out of my house! I launched myself off the floor, the bat held high over my shoulder. I didn't aim, I just swung. I swung at the voice, I swung at the memory. The bat connected with the smart speaker in a deafening crack of plastic and electronics. The device exploded, skittering across the entertainment center in a shower of black shards. And in that instant, everything stopped. The TV screen went black. The music from the laptop cut off. The beeping from the bedroom ceased. The voicemail on my phone died. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that was louder than the noise it replaced. I stood there, panting, my knuckles white on the grip of the bat. My chest heaved. The wrecked speaker was a casualty on the floor. I had done something. I had fought back. I had broken one of his toys. The silence held for a second. 2. 3. Then, a soft chime. My phone, lying face up on the floor a few feet away. The screen had lit up. New message. My blood ran cold. I let the bat clatter to the floor. My legs felt like lead as I took a step, then another. I knelt, my knees cracking, and picked up the phone. It was him. The same number. A video file. My thumb, slick with sweat, pressed play. The video had no sound. It was grainy, shot in the low light of the room. It showed a man from behind, his shoulders hunched, his body coiled like a spring. He was holding a baseball bat. I saw him scream, the motion silent and terrifying. I saw him lunge forward and swing the bat with savage force, smashing a black object on a TV stand. I was watching myself. I was watching a video of what had just happened. Seconds ago, my eyes shot from the phone screen to the top of my laptop, visible on the desk in my bedroom just beyond the doorway. I had closed the lid. I had put a piece of thick, black electrical tape over the webcam months ago. I was sure of it. But in the video on my phone, from the high angle it was shot from, I could see the laptop. I could see the top of my own head as I raged. And in the very corner of the video frame, blurry but undeniable, I could see it. The little strip of black tape, peeled back just enough for the lens to see. The video played on a loop. A silent, grainy movie of my own madness. My face, twisted in a soundless scream. My arm, swinging the bat. The explosion of black plastic. And the tape. The little strip of black tape over the webcam, peeled back like a tiny, mocking smile. He was watching. He was always watching. My brain was a dead wire. It couldn't form a thought. It could only replay the images. The lipstick on the door. The pictures of me. The dispatcher's voice. My mother's voice. My own voice. And now this. A live feed of my own breakdown, delivered to me by the architect of that breakdown. I had to get out. The thought wasn't a plan. It was an animal instinct, a primal scream from the deepest part of my brain that was still functioning. Get out. Run. My phone felt slick and alien in my hand. My thumb, shaking, slid across the screen, away from the video, away from my own face. I stabbed at my contacts list. My vision was blurry. The names swam together. C.D.J. Jason. I pressed the call button. It rang once. Twice. My heart hammered against my ribs with each ring, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, heavy silence of the apartment. Hey man, what's up? Jason's voice. Normal, calm, the sound of a world that wasn't on fire. A sob caught in my throat. Jason, I croaked. The name was a prayer. Jason, you have to help me. Whoa, Kev, slow down. You sound terrible. What's going on? He's here. He's in the house. I don't know. He's in the wires. He's in everything. The words poured out, a chaotic mess of the last hour. I told him about the peephole, the lipstick, the pictures. I told him about the 911 call, how they told me the number was mine. I told him about the smart speaker. About my mother's voice. I knew how I sounded. I sounded completely insane. I was waiting for him to tell me to take a deep breath, to ask if I'd been drinking. But he didn't. There was a pause on the other end, and when he spoke, his voice was tight, serious. Jesus, Kevin, are you okay? Where are you right now? In my living room. I smashed the speaker. He sent me a video of me doing it. For my laptop. Jason, he's watching me right now. My eyes darted around the room, to the black, dead eye of the laptop in the bedroom. Okay, listen to me. Get out of there. Right now, he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "Don't hang up. Just grab your keys and wallet and get out of the building. Come to my place. I'll buzz you up. Do you hear me?" Relief washed over me, so potent it made my knees weak. He believed me. He wasn't questioning me. He was helping. "Yeah, okay, I'm going. I'm staying on the line with you. Just go. Now." "Okay." I got to my feet, my legs unsteady. The phone was pressed hard against my ear, Jason's breathing a steady presence in the chaos. I moved toward the door. Wallet. I needed my wallet. I grabbed it from the small dish on the entryway table. The second thing was the keys. My car keys. They were always on the hook, the little brass hook right next to the door. I put them there every single night without fail. It was an automatic motion, as natural as breathing. But the hook was empty. My fingers brushed against the cool brass. Nothing. "What is it?" Jason's voice was sharp in my ear. "My keys," I said, my voice low. "They're not here." "What do you mean they're not there?" "They're always on the hook." "I know, but they're not." My heart, which had just started to slow down, kicked back into a furious gallop. I patted my pockets. The front too. The back too. Nothing but lint and the thin rectangle of my phone. I turned, my eyes scanning the entryway. The floor. The top of the table again. Maybe they fell. They hadn't. "Kev, talk to me." "They're gone, Jason. They're gone." I was getting frantic now, my hands patting my sides again, a useless, repetitive motion. He took them. The thought hit me like a physical blow. He was in here, and he took my keys. He was trapping me. Okay, calm down," Jason said. But there was a new sound in his voice, a slight sigh, an edge of something. Was it frustration? "You sure you didn't just put them in your jacket pocket or something when you came in last night? You do that sometimes when you're tired." "No," I insisted. But even as I said it, a sliver of doubt crept in. Did I? I was tired last night. I couldn't remember walking from my car to the door. My mind was starting to feel like a sieve, important facts slipping through the cracks. "No, I always hang them up. Just check your coat, man. I'm waiting for you." I turned from the door, the phone still glued to my head, and looked around the living room. Where was my coat from yesterday? Thrown over the back of the armchair? I walked over and picked it up. A black North Face shell. I jammed my hands into the pockets. Empty. I threw it on the floor. "Nothing," I said, my breath coming in ragged bursts. "He took them. He's playing with me." There was another sigh from Jason's end, louder this time. "Dude, are you sure? You're probably just panicking and not thinking straight. Look, just forget the car. Call an Uber. Or a taxi. Just get over here. I'm waiting, man. It's getting late." The tone. It was the tone of a person dealing with a drunk friend. A tone of weary patience. It made me feel small. It made me feel stupid. It made me feel crazy. Like this was all in my head. Like I was the problem. He was offering a solution, and I was just making it more difficult. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just panicking. "Yeah," I said, my voice hollow. "Okay, a taxi. I'll call one." "Good. I'll see you in a bit." And he hung up. The silence that filled the apartment was absolute. I was alone again. Alone with the broken speaker, the taunting video, and my own fractured mind. That brief connection to the outside world, to sanity, was gone. And in its place was a creeping shame. Jason thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. Maybe the 911 operator was right. Maybe this was all some kind of breakdown. But I still needed a jacket. It was cold out. I walked into my bedroom. The laptop sat on the desk, a silent black monolith. I refused to look at the webcam. I pulled open my closet door. A row of shirts and jackets. I reached for the simple navy blue hoodie I wore most often. My fingers brushed the fabric. And then I stopped. Hanging next to the hoodie was a heavier jacket, a dark gray wool coat I hadn't worn in at least a week, maybe more. The left pocket was bulging slightly, a distinct, lumpy shape. My hand moved on its own. My fingers didn't shake. They were suddenly very steady. I reached into the pocket. The material was rough against my skin. My fingertips touched cold metal. A familiar shape. A set of keys on a ring. I pulled them out. My car key. My apartment key. The little blue fob for the main gate. They were all there. cool and solid in my palm. I stared at them. I hadn't worn this coat. I knew I hadn't. There was no reason for my keys to be in this pocket. It was impossible. He put them there. It was in my closet. He had been in my room, inches from where I slept. He moved my keys from the hook by the door to this pocket. A simple act of possession. Another way to tell me that no part of my life was my own. My blood ran cold. The relief of finding the keys was instantly erased by the horror of how I'd found them. A lump formed in my throat. I felt something else in the pocket. Something flat and square. My fingers went back in. They found the object. It was thick cardstock, smooth and slick. I pulled it out. It was a Polaroid picture, the kind that develops instantly, with the thick white border at the bottom. The image was still setting, a little hazy around the edges, but the subject was perfectly clear. It was a picture of Jason. He was standing in my living room, right next to my bookshelf. He was smiling. A wide, easy, friendly smile. He was wearing the gray hoodie he'd had on when we went to the game last week. One hand was raised in a casual little wave, as if greeting the person taking the picture. Behind him, clear as day on the wall, was my framed Pulp Fiction poster. The afternoon light from the window was hitting it in a way I recognized. A way it only did around 4 in the afternoon. The world tilted. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. My head snapped up. I looked from the photo in my hand out into the living room. The bookshelf. The poster. The exact spot where he was standing in the picture. He had been here. In my apartment. While I was at work. Someone had been here with him. Someone with a Polaroid camera. Or he had taken it himself. A selfie. A trophy. The call. His calm voice. His impatience. You do that sometimes when you're tired. The way he so easily dismissed my fear. The way he made me doubt myself. It wasn't just impatience. It was direction. It was manipulation. A script. He wasn't my lifeline. He was part of the game. He was one of the players. My legs gave out. I slid down the closet doorframe, landing hard on the floor. The keys and the photo fell from my numb hand, clattering on the hardwood. My gaze was fixed on the smiling face in the picture. It wasn't the face of my best friend. It was the face of a monster, wearing a mask I knew and trusted. He didn't just know about the game. He was helping the game master. Or maybe there was no one else. Maybe it was just him. It had always been just him. My phone, lying on the rug beside me, vibrated. The screen lit up. New message. From the same blocked number. My hand trembled as I reached for it. My thumb felt like it was made of lead as I swiped to open the notification. The words appeared on the screen, stark and white against the black background. Your friend is waiting. Don't disappoint him. The phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the rug with a soft thud. The screen glowed, a miniature tombstone with an epitaph written by a ghost. Your friend is waiting. My lungs refused to work. They were 2 dead bags in my chest. I couldn't pull in air. I couldn't push it out. My vision tunneled, the world shrinking until all that existed was the smiling face in the Polaroid, the friendly wave, the easy grin, a mask. A perfect, lifelike mask he had worn for years, the fishing trips, the late-night beers, the time he helped me move into this very apartment. He knew every square inch of it. He had carried my couch through that door. My body moved before my brain gave the order. A surge of pure animal adrenaline shot through me, hot and sharp. I wasn't going to Jason's. I wasn't going anywhere. I scrambled to my feet, my legs like jelly, and lunged for the front door. My hands fumbled with the deadbolt. The click of it sliding home was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I twisted the lock on the knob. It wasn't enough. It was nothing. My eyes darted around the living room. The bookshelf. Heavy, filled with books I'd never read. I put my shoulder into it, my shoes slipping on the hardwood floor. A low groan of protesting wood. I pushed harder, a raw sound tearing from my throat. It moved. Inch by agonizing inch, I shoved it across the floor, the legs leaving deep scars in the varnish until it was jammed tight against the door. It wasn't pretty. It wouldn't hold forever. But it was something. What else? The armchair. I grabbed it. dragging it across the room and wedging it against the bookshelf, the coffee table. I heaved it on top of the chair's seat, a clumsy, teetering monument to my terror. My barricade. It was pathetic. It was all I had. I backed away from my creation, panting, sweat stinging my eyes. The apartment was still, silent. I killed the lights, plunging the room into the murky orange glow of the city outside. I sank to the floor in the farthest corner, pulling my knees to my chest. I sat there in the dark, waiting, listening. My own breathing was a storm in my ears. I forced myself to slow it down. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Be quiet. Don't make a sound. Don't exist. Minutes bled into an hour. Then another. My muscles ached from the tension. Every creak of the old building was a footstep. Every siren in the distance was for me. My mind kept replaying the Polaroid. Jason's smile. He wasn't just a player. He had to be the one. The voice on the speaker. The 911 call. It was all him. He had my phone number spoofed. He probably recorded my mom's voice months ago. It was a long, sick game. A performance. And I was the only audience. The phone vibrated again, on the rug where I dropped it. I ignored it. Let it buzz. Let him send his messages. I wasn't looking. I was a stone in the corner of a dark room. It stopped. The silence that followed was different. Deeper. Heavier. It must have been 2 a.m. My eyes were gritty, my body screaming with exhaustion and fear. That's when I heard it. Tap, 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 tap. It was on the front door. So soft I thought I'd imagined it. A mouse in the walls. A branch against the building. Tap, 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 tap. There it was again. A rhythm. A gentle, patient rhythm. My blood ran cold. My heart, which had been a frantic drum, seemed to stop altogether. It was a melody. A simple 5-note melody I knew better than my own name. The one my mother used to hum to get me to sleep when I was a child with a fever. A secret rhythm between a mother and her son. A secret Jason had heard 100 times when he stayed over. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a whimper. He wasn't just trying to scare me. He was skinning my memories and wearing them as a trophy. He was taking everything that was safe and twisting it into a weapon. The tapping stopped. I held my breath, straining my ears against the silence. For a full minute, nothing. Maybe he was gone. Maybe it was a final, taunting goodbye for the night. Hope is a stupid, fragile thing. Then, a new sound began. A tiny, metallic scratch. It came from the lock. A thin, sharp sound. It was followed by a faint click. Another scratch. He wasn't knocking anymore. He was working. Methodically. Patiently. He was picking the lock. Scritch. Click. Scrap-a. The sound was an ice pick to my sanity. It was calm. It was confident. It was the sound of a man who had all the time in the world. He knew I was in here. He knew I was listening. The barricade meant nothing if he could just open the door. The bookshelf and chair would tumble inwards, an avalanche of my own failed defenses. My breathing turned ragged. My eyes were glued to the doorknob, a dark shape in the gloom. I saw it move. A tiny, almost imperceptible jiggle. Click! That one was different. Louder. More final. A tumbler falling into place. My body tensed. This was it. Click, clack, the deadbolt. He was working on the deadbolt now. My fortress was a joke. I was a rat in a box, and the lid was slowly being pried open. I scrambled backwards on my hands and feet, crab walking away from the door until my back hit the opposite wall. My eyes darted around the room, looking for a weapon. A lamp. A book. Fucking nothing. My baseball bat was in a dozen pieces, the shards still scattered around the broken smart speaker. The scraping stopped. The silence slammed back in, a physical force. I waited. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic prisoner. Did he do it? Was the lock open? Was he about to turn the knob and push, sending my pathetic barricade crashing down? Nothing. 1 second. 2. 5, 10. Maybe he failed. Maybe he gave up. Maybe he couldn't pick the deadbolt. A sliver of manic hope shot through me. Bam! The sound was not a sound. It was a concussion. The entire doorframe shuddered. The coffee table on the armchair rattled, and a book fell to the floor with a flat slap. He wasn't picking the lock anymore. He was using his body. A raw scream ripped out of my throat. I couldn't help it. It was pure animal terror. Bam! Another hit. A long, vertical crack appeared in the white, painted wood of the door. Dust and splinters puffed into the air. This wasn't a game of subtlety now. This was brute force. This was rage. "Jason, stop!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "What the fuck do you want?" My answer was a third, monstrous slam. Crack! The wood around the lock splintered and bowed inwards. I could see the dark metal of the deadbolt straining against its housing. It wouldn't hold. 2 more hits. Maybe 1. I threw myself up, stumbling toward the kitchen. A knife. I needed a knife. My hands flew over the counter, closing around the smooth, cold handle of the chef's knife in the block. I pulled it free, the steel gleaming in the half-light. I turned back to face the door, my knuckles white, the knife held out in a shaking, useless guard. And then it stopped. The assault was over as suddenly as it began. The silence was absolute, deafening. My own gasping breaths filled the void. My eyes were locked on the fractured door, waiting for the next blow. It didn't come. What was he doing? Why stop? I took a hesitant step forward, the knife still pointing at the door. I could see a sliver of the hallway's dim light through the main crack. I crept closer, my heart in my throat. I peered through the splintered wood. The hallway was empty. His shadow wasn't there. Nothing. Then I saw it, a small, white rectangle being pushed through the crack. A piece of paper. It poked through, wiggled, and then fell silently to the floor on my side of the door. I stared at it. A note. After all that violence, a note. My body moved on its own. The terror was replaced by a strange, numb compulsion. I had to know. I lowered the knife and knelt down, my hand trembling as I reached for the folded piece of paper. It felt like normal printer paper. I unfolded it. It wasn't a message. It was a drawing. A crude but accurate floor plan of my apartment. The living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, my bedroom. It was all there. And in the center of the rectangle marked bedroom, there was a big red X. It looked like it was drawn with a red marker, thick and angry. Beneath the drawing, scrawled in the same red ink, were 5 words. 5 words that shattered the last bit of my sanity and turned my blood to ice. The back door is easier. My brain refused to process the words. It was like trying to read a foreign language. The letters were there, the shapes were familiar, but the meaning was a wall of static. The back door is easier. A floor plan. My floor plan. Drawn in blood-red ink. The knife felt heavy and useless in my hand. He wasn't at the front door anymore. He was playing a different game. This wasn't a siege. It was a hunt. And I was the rabbit, frozen in the middle of a field, realizing the hunter had circled around behind me. My gaze snapped from the note to the hallway leading to my bedroom. The back door. He didn't mean a literal back door. This building didn't have them. He meant the balcony. The sliding glass door in my bedroom. A new kind of fear, colder and sharper than the blind panic from moments before, pierced through me. It was a strategist's fear. He wasn't just trying to break in, he was directing my movements, he was hurting me. That note wasn't just a threat. It was a suggestion. An invitation. He wanted me to go to the bedroom. Why? My mind raced, a frantic engine spewing useless theories. Was he already in there? Waiting? Was this a trick to get me to move away from the barricaded front door so he could go back and finish the job? It didn't matter. My options had just been reduced to one. Stay here in the living room, near the splintered door that he could batter down at any moment, or move toward the only other potential exit. An exit he pointed out himself. A trap. It had to be a trap. But a trap was a choice, and staying here was a death sentence. Down. I had to get down on the floor, away from windows, away from any potential line of sight. My body obeyed before my thoughts caught up. I dropped to my knees, the impact jarring my teeth. The knife handle was slick with my own sweat. I crawled. On my hands and knees, I moved across the hardwood floor like an infant, my head low. Splinters from the brutalized front doors scraped my palms. I didn't care. The living room felt vast and exposed no man's land. The murky orange glow from the city outside cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to claw and reach for me. Every object I passed, the leg of a chair, the corner of a rug, was a potential hiding spot for something I couldn't see. I kept the knife pointed forward, a stupid, useless talisman against the dark. My own breathing was a cannon in the silence. I forced it down, taking shallow sips of air through my nose. Be quiet. Be small. Don't exist. I reached the doorway to the short hall. I paused, pressing my back flat against the wall, and listened. Nothing. No creak of a floorboard from the bedroom. No sound except the faint, distant hum of the city and the frantic drumming in my own ears. One step into the hall. Then another. The bedroom door was right there, slightly ajar, just as I'd left it hours ago. It seemed like a lifetime. My hand, shaking uncontrollably, reached for the knob. I pushed the door open slowly. It swung inward with a soft whisper of sound. I held my breath, peering into the darkness beyond. The room was a rectangle of shadows, cut in half by the faint light filtering through the vertical blinds of the balcony door. I slid inside, my back scraping against the doorframe. My first move was to lock it. I reached behind me, my fingers finding the small push-button lock on the knob. I pressed it. The soft click was a tiny shield against an ocean of threat. Pathetic. But it was something. My eyes adjusted. The room took shape. My bed, unmade. A pile of clothes on a chair. My dresser. Everything was exactly as I had left it. He wasn't in here. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made my knees buckle, washed over me. He wasn't in here. The note was a mind game. A way to make me panic, to make me feel surrounded. He wanted to paralyze me with fear. And he had offered me a way out. The balcony. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. Below me was Mrs. Gable's place. Her balcony was identical to mine. If I could get over the railing, I could drop down. It was a 10-foot drop, maybe less. I might break an ankle. I'd take a broken ankle over a knife in the chest any day. From there, I could smash her sliding door, or just scream my head off until someone called the cops for real. It was a plan, a desperate, stupid, and beautiful plan. I crept toward the balcony door. The red X on the drawing burned in my mind, but hope was a stubborn weed. He wanted me to think it was a trap, so maybe it wasn't. My hand reached for the thin plastic wand that controlled the blinds. I twisted it slowly, carefully. The slats rotated, opening thin slivers of the world outside. The balcony was empty. The railing was there. The 2 dead plants I kept forgetting to throw out were right where they should be. Beyond it, the streetlights cast a familiar yellow haze over the parking lot. An empty car. A dumpster. Normalcy. It looked safe. It looked like freedom. My heart hammered with a new rhythm. Not just fear, but anticipation. I can do this. I can get out. My fingers found the latch on the sliding glass door. It was a simple, cheap lock, the kind you flip up to open. My thumb pressed against it. This was it. One quick motion, slide the door, vault the railing, and I was gone. I pushed up. At the exact instant the lock clicked open, every single light outside my window went out. It wasn't a flicker. It wasn't a fade. It was a guillotine. One moment, the world was bathed in a yellow glow. The next, it was plunged into an absolute bottomless dark. Not just the streetlights. The lights from the other apartment buildings. The glow from the 24-hour laundromat down the block. Everything. A total blackout. My hand froze on the latch. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a city-wide power outage. The timing was too perfect, too precise. It was him. He had cut the power. He was showing me, again, that he was in control. Not just of the lock on my door, but of the very world outside my window. The silence that followed the darkness was profound. The city's hum was gone. There was nothing. I was in a black, soundless box. The trap wasn't the balcony. The trap was the hope that the balcony represented. My other hand, the one not holding the knife, fumbled for my phone in my pocket. I ripped it out, my thumb mashing the power button. The screen flared to life, a sickening blue beacon in the oppressive dark. I stared at the top left corner. No service. The 2 words were a death sentence. The network bars were gone. The Wi-Fi symbol had a little exclamation point next to it. He hadn't just cut the power, he'd cut me off completely. No calls, no internet, no 911. The front door was barricaded. The power was out, the lines were dead. I was utterly, completely alone, buried alive on the 3rd floor. My eyes were still glued to the phone screen when the light hit me. It wasn't a light, it was a physical blow. A beam, so impossibly bright, shot up from below and exploded in my face. It was the white-hot flash of a camera bulb, but it didn't fade. It stayed, pinning me, erasing my vision in a flood of searing light. I cried out, throwing a hand up to shield my eyes, stumbling back a step. I couldn't see anything but the blinding white orb. It was coming from the balcony below mine. Mrs. Gable's balcony. A silhouette formed in the center of the glare. A dark, man-shaped hole burned into the light. I couldn't make out a face. I couldn't see clothes. Just a shape. A human shape, standing where a sweet old woman should be. The shape moved. An arm came up. Something in its hand glinted, catching the edge of its own powerful beam. It wasn't a knife. It was too small to be a rifle. Too steady. It was a handgun. And then I saw it. A second, smaller point of light bloomed from the weapon, a tiny, angry spark of red. It danced for a second on the glass of my balcony door, a furious insect looking for a place to land. It found one. A perfect, sharp red dot appeared on my chest. It settled right over my heart. The breath I was holding ripped out of my lungs in a strangled gasp. My legs gave out. I fell backwards, landing hard on the floor, the knife clattering out of my grasp and skittering away into the dark. I scrambled back, crab-walking away from the door, my eyes wide with a terror that transcended anything I had felt before. I slammed the sliding door shut with my foot. The cheap frame rattled in its track. The red dot didn't go away. It passed right through the glass. It swept across the floor, a predator's gaze, and then climbed my body as I pushed myself into a sitting position against the far wall. It moved over my leg, my stomach, my chest. It danced around my throat. Then it stopped. It rested, perfectly still, directly in the center of my forehead. He didn't shoot. He didn't have to. The dot was the message. It was the period at the end of a very simple sentence. I have you. There is no escape. I decide when this ends. I sat there, pinned against the wall in the dark. My entire universe shrunk to that single, burning point of red light. All I could do was stare at the door, waiting for the sound of the glass shattering, or the gunshot that would finally turn the light out for good. But nothing came. Only the silence. And the dot. The patient, unwavering red dot. The red dot did not move. It was a perfect, tiny circle of light painted on the skin between my eyebrows. It didn't feel like a light. It felt like a pressure, a physical weight pushing me down, pinning my soul to the floorboards. My thoughts were gone. My brain was a blank slate, wiped clean by a single, unwavering point of red. I didn't dare breathe. I didn't dare blink. He wasn't shooting. The silence stretched, pulled tight like a wire. Why wasn't he shooting? The question was a distant echo, a thought from a different person in a different life. The only reality was the dot. It was a full stop at the end of my life, and he was just waiting, deciding when to press the period into my skull. Then, A new thought cut through the white noise of my terror. A cold, practical shard of an idea. I was on the floor, in the open. A perfect target. He was enjoying this. He was watching me through a scope, watching me break. The game wasn't just to kill me. The game was the fear. And if I was going to live another 10 seconds, I had to change the rules. I had to get out of sight. My eyes scanned the dark room without moving my head. The bed. The dresser. The wall. To my right, the closet door. It was an island of deeper shadow in the darkness. My only chance. A pathetic one. But it was something other than lying here, waiting for the crack of the gun. The crawl backwards was the hardest thing I've ever done. I moved by inches, pushing with my heels, my hands flat on the floor behind me. Every scrape of fabric on wood was a cannon blast in the silence. I expected the gunshot with every movement. My eyes stayed locked on the balcony door. The red dot stayed locked on me. It slid from my forehead, down my nose, across my chin. It rested on my throat. A promise. It followed my slow retreat, a patient predator tracking its wounded prey. I was a bug on a pin, and he was just turning me over, examining me before the end. My back hit the wall with a soft thud. I froze. The dot danced on my chest right over my heart. I was out of room. It was now or never. I didn't think, I just moved. In one violent, clumsy motion, I threw myself sideways, scrambling the last 2 feet toward the closet. My body was a mess of flailing limbs. I slammed against the closet door, my hand fumbling for the knob. I twisted it, fell inside, and pulled the door shut behind me. I was plunged into a new kind of darkness, a thick, suffocating black that smelled of old coats and mothballs. I pressed my hand hard against my mouth, stifling the sob that was trying to rip itself out of my lungs. My chest heaved. I was alive. He hadn't shot. For a second, a single, insane second, I felt a surge of victory. I had broken his line of sight. I had won a tiny piece of the game. That's when I heard the sound from the balcony. It wasn't the sound of shattering glass I'd expected. It was a single, sharp pop. A clean, metallic sound. Like a finger snapping. It was followed by the soft, almost silent slide of the glass door gliding on its track. He was inside. He had opened it as easily as if he had a key. My victory evaporated, replaced by a cold dread that filled my stomach like cement. He was in the room. His feet, when they touched the hardwood floor, were impossibly quiet. A soft press of weight here. Another there. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't searching. He was moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who owned the space. I was crammed between my winter jacket and a stack of old shoeboxes. I tried to make myself smaller, pulling my knees to my chest. I held my breath until my lungs screamed. I could track his movement by the faint creak of the floorboards. He walked over to the bed. A pause. Then he moved toward the dresser. Another pause. He was taking his time. He was enjoying being in my space, inhabiting it, contaminating it. The footsteps stopped. I heard a faint click. Then the music started. It came from a small speaker, the sound tinny and clear. A simple, 5-note melody. A child's lullaby. My body went rigid. I knew that song. I knew it in my bones. It was the song my mother used to sing to me when I was a kid, the one she made up herself to calm my night terrors. A song no one else in the world knew. How? The question was a physical blow. It knocked the air from my lungs more effectively than any punch. How could he know that? The innocent, gentle notes filled the room, a grotesque perversion of my only safe memory. The lullaby wasn't a warning anymore. It was a statement. I don't just know where you live, Alex. I know who you are. I know what's inside your head. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. This was an execution, and he was taking me through my life one memory at a time before he finished it. The footsteps started again. One step. My heart seized. Another. Closer. The floorboards creaked right outside the door. He was here. He was standing right there. I could feel his presence, a weight in the air just on the other side of the thin piece of wood. I squeezed my eyes shut, my teeth clamped down on my knuckles. This is it. This is the end. I braced for the door to be torn from its hinges. The metal shaft of the doorknob began to turn. I could see it through the tiny crack, glinting in the faint light from the open balcony. It turned with an agonizing slowness. My entire world shrank to that turning piece of metal. It stopped. The latch clicked free. The door was unlocked. But it didn't open. Silence. Just the cheerful, horrifying notes of the lullaby. And then, a new sound. Tap. It was on the door. Soft. Right in front of my face. Tap, tap. My breath caught in my throat. Tap. He was knocking. Tapping his finger on the door. Perfectly in time with the rhythm of the lullaby. He wasn't trying to find me. He knew exactly where I was. He had known the whole time this was a performance. A curtain call. He was a cat tapping on a mouse hole, not out of hunger, but out of sheer sadistic pleasure. The tapping stopped. The music continued its loop. The silence between the notes was a physical thing, a crushing pressure. I waited. And waited. The door was ripped open. It flew inward with such force that it slammed against the wall. The sound was like a gunshot in the small room. I cried out, a strangled, pathetic noise, and threw my arms over my head. He just stood there, a tall figure, dressed head to toe in black. On his face was a mask, a plain, white, featureless mask, like an unfinished mannequin head. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a blank, smooth, terrifying oval. The lullaby played on, the soundtrack to this waking nightmare. He didn't have a gun in his hand. He didn't have a knife. He just stood in the doorway, his head tilted slightly, watching me cower among my own clothes. My mind was screaming, do something, fight, run. But my body was disconnected. I was paralyzed, a spectator to my own death. He slowly raised his hand. It wasn't a weapon he was holding. It was my phone. The screen was lit up, a bright blue rectangle in the dark. And on the screen was a face. Jake's face. He was in his car, his expression a mask of panic and concern. His mouth was moving, forming words I couldn't hear but knew by heart. Alex? Alex! Where are you? What's going on? Talk to me! The man in the mask took a step forward and turned the phone so the screen was facing me directly. He was showing me my friend, my only lifeline, the one person I could have called for help. A wave of nausea rolled through me. He had my phone. He had been listening. He had been watching. I opened my mouth to scream, to yell Jake's name, to give him some proof, any proof. Before a sound could escape, the man in the mask raised his other gloved hand. He brought a single finger up to where his lips should have been on the blank white surface. A shush. The gesture was quiet, calm, absolute. My throat closed up. The sound died before it was born. My scream turned into a choked gasp. He held my gaze through the empty mask for a long moment. Then, his thumb moved deliberately on the screen of my phone. The image of Jake's frantic face vanished, replaced by the blackness of a disconnected call. He ended the call. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed the phone to me. It landed with a soft clatter on a pile of sweaters at my feet. The screen glowed. It wasn't the home screen. It was an open text message. The recipient was already filled in. Jake. And in the message box, a sentence was already typed out, the cursor blinking patiently at the end of it. I'm fine. Just stressed. Sorry to bother you. He hadn't sent it. He stood there, perfectly still in the doorway of my closet, the lullaby still playing its cheerful, insane melody. The blank mask watched me. He was waiting for me to do it myself. My thumb hovered over the screen. It was a dead weight, a piece of meat I couldn't control. His command, the typed-out lie, pulsed with a soft, patient light. I'm fine. Just stressed. Sorry to bother you. Behind the phone, the blank, white mask was a silent, unblinking God. The lullaby, my mother's song, continued its cheerful, burrowing rhythm into my skull. Send it. The thought wasn't mine. It was an order injected directly into my brain. Send it, or he ends the call a different way. He ends Jake. He ends me. My thumb trembled. It moved with the slow, grinding pain of a rusted gear. Down. The glass was cold against my skin. The message bubble turned blue. Sent. A wave of sickness, so potent it made my vision swim, washed over me. I had just cut my own lifeline. I had just told my only friend in the world that everything was okay, while I was being held captive by a monster in my own bedroom. The blank mask tilted, a motion so slight it was barely a gesture. It was a nod, an approval. Then he stepped back. One step. Then another. He moved out of the closet doorway, his retreat as silent and deliberate as his advance. My mind, overloaded and short-circuiting, couldn't process it. He wasn't lunging. He wasn't pulling a weapon. He was giving me space. He walked to my bed, the bed I hadn't made in 3 days. He sat on the edge of it, the mattress dipping under his weight. My space. My mess. He was in it, a contamination, a stain I could never wash out. He was perfectly still, a black silhouette against the pale light from the balcony. The lullaby finally clicked off. The sudden silence was louder than the music had been. It was a heavy, listening silence. He lifted a gloved hand and pointed. Not at me, but at the floor, about 6 feet in front of him. A single, black finger, extended and unwavering. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. My legs were jelly. My body refused the command. Run. Scream. Fucking do something. My survival instincts were screaming at me, but they were a distant radio signal, drowned out by the static of raw terror. Running felt like suicide. He had opened my reinforced balcony door with a pop. He knew my mother's song. He had my phone. He wasn't bound by normal rules. Running would be a game to him, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled my blood, that I would lose. Slowly, like an old man with failing joints, I pushed myself up. My back scraped against the closet wall. I used the door frame to pull myself to my feet. Every muscle screamed. I stumbled out of the closet, the phone still clutched in my hand. He didn't move. The white mask tracked me. I walked to the spot he had indicated, my bare feet cold on the hardwood. I lowered myself to the floor, my legs crossed, like a child called to the principal's office. We just sat there. Him on my bed, me on the floor. An audience of one before a blank-faced executioner. The seconds stretched into an eternity. I could hear my own heart, a frantic, hammering drum against my ribs. What was this? What did he want? If he was going to kill me, why the theater? Why the game? Ori foch. He reached into a pocket of his black jacket and pulled out a tablet, a thin, sleek rectangle of dark glass. He held it in one hand and, with an unnerving delicacy, began typing with the index finger of his other hand. The soft clicks were the only sound in the universe. Tap, 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 tap. He stopped. He turned the tablet and held it up. The screen glowed, the white text stark against the black background. Why do you think you deserve a quiet life? I stared at the words. The question didn't make sense. My brain, already running on fumes, tried to parse it. Was this a riddle? A test? I opened my mouth, a dry croak escaping my throat. I don't understand. My own voice sounded alien, thin and pathetic in the quiet room. The mask remained impassive. He made no sign he had heard me. He simply waited. I don't have anything, I stammered, my words tumbling out in a rush. I have a little money in the bank. You can take it. The TV. The laptop. Take everything. Just. Please. The begging felt like acid in my throat. He lowered the tablet. He ignored my pleas, as if I hadn't spoken at all. With the same deliberate motion, he snatched the tablet back and began typing again. This time the taps were faster, sharper, angry. Tap, 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 tap. He held it up again. A new message, glowing with cold, digital judgment. Boring job. No friends, except that idiot. No purpose, a wasted life. The air left my lungs in a single, silent rush. This was different. This wasn't a threat of violence. This was a vivisection. He hadn't just breached my apartment. He had breached my life. He had peeled back the layers of mundane existence I used to shield myself and looked directly at the hollow core. He knew. He knew about the dead-end data entry job I hated. He knew Jake was the only person I'd spoken to in a week. He knew about the long nights spent scrolling through other people's perfect lives, the pizza boxes piling up, the feeling of being a ghost in my own story. He was holding up a mirror, and the reflection was a failure. The terror shifted, mutating into something deeper, something colder. It was shame. Profound, bottomless shame. He wasn't just here to kill me, he was here to show me why I deserved it. He stood up. The motion was fluid, a column of black rising from my bed. I flinched, pulling my arms in, bracing for the blow that had to be coming. But he didn't move toward me. He walked to the open balcony door, his impossibly quiet feet making the floorboards barely whisper. He stood there, looking out at the city lights, his back to me. For a moment, a wild, insane spark of hope ignited in my chest. He's leaving. It's over. He's just going to leave. He stood there for a full 10 seconds. Then he turned around. One last time, he raised the tablet. He had been typing while he faced the window. A final message waited for me. I'll give you a purpose. Survival. From now on, this is a game. Rules will be sent later. A game. The word hung in the air, dripping with poison. This whole night, this wasn't an attack. It was an orientation. An onboarding session for a nightmare I couldn't opt out of. My mind reeled. Rules? Sent later? How? Before I could even form the questions, he moved. He lowered the tablet, took a step back onto the balcony. He swung one leg over the railing, then the other, with the practiced ease of an acrobat. He stood for a heartbeat on the narrow ledge, a black cutout against the distant, indifferent glow of the city. He gave me one last look, the blank face a final, terrifying punctuation mark. And then he was gone. He didn't climb down. He didn't make a sound. He just dropped. Straight down into the darkness between the buildings. Vanished, as if he had never been there at all. I was alone. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat on the floor, my body locked in place, my mind a screaming void. The only proof he was ever here was the cold draft from the open balcony door and the tablet, which he'd left on my bed. Eventually, the shaking started. It began in my hands and spread through my entire body, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I crawled to the balcony door on my hands and knees, my heart pounding with the fear that he'd be waiting there. I slammed it shut and fumbled with the lock. Then I did the same with the front door, ramming the deadbolt home. Safe. The word was a joke. I wasn't safe. I was in a cage, and the zookeeper had just left, promising to be back. I stumbled through my apartment. Nothing was broken, other than the mess I'd made scrambling into the closet. Nothing was out of place, nothing was missing. My laptop was on the desk, my wallet was on the dresser. He hadn't come here to take anything, he had come to leave something behind. Fear. A purpose. My eyes fell on the tablet lying face down on my unmade bed. I approached it like it was a venomous snake. My hand trembled as I reached out and picked it up. It felt heavy, cold. I turned it over. The screen lit up. He had logged out of whatever account he was using. The screen was no longer black with white text. It was a wallpaper. A photograph. My blood turned to ice. It was a family photo. My mom and dad, younger, smiling, standing on either side of a 10-year-old me with a gappy-toothed grin. We were at the lake house, the one we sold after Dad got sick. Mom's arm was around my shoulder. Dad was ruffling my hair. It was a happy memory, a perfect day frozen in time. And it was impossible. That photo was never scanned. It was never uploaded. It existed in only one place in the entire world. A dusty, leather-bound photo album stored in a cardboard box at the bottom of my closet. The same closet I had been hiding in. The same closet he had stood in front of, tapping his finger, waiting. He hadn't just been in my room, he had been through my past. He had leafed through my life, picked out a memory, and put it on display. This wasn't a game, it was an excavation. and he was just getting started. I didn't call the cops. The thought crossed my mind for a second, a fleeting, stupid spark of normalcy, and then died. What would I say? That a man in a blank white mask who moves like smoke and communicates through a tablet broke into my reinforced apartment, told me my life was a waste, and then just dropped off the balcony? Dropped. 14 stories. They wouldn't send a patrol car. They'd send a van with soft walls. He'd left no proof, except the tablet. And the photo on its screen. My family. At the lake house. A moment of happiness so pure it felt like it belonged to someone else. He had gone into the bottom of my closet, into the box marked Old D, past the yearbooks and tax returns, and found the one thing I never looked at. He didn't just break a lock. He broke into my history. The rest of the day was a fog of quiet, methodical panic. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just moved. I checked every inch of my apartment. The vents in the ceiling. The space behind the refrigerator. The guts of the smoke detector, which I ripped from its mounting with my bare hands. I scanned the walls with a cheap bug detector app on my phone. The needle staying stubbornly in the green. Nothing. No cameras. No microphones. No wires that weren't supposed to be there. The lack of evidence was somehow worse than finding a lens staring back at me. It meant his reach was beyond my understanding. It meant he didn't need to be in the room to see me. The sun went down. The city lights, once a comforting blanket of anonymous life, now looked like a million unblinking eyes. I sat on the couch, the tablet dark on the coffee table in front of me. I waited. The previous night wasn't an attack, it was an orientation. Rules will be sent later. I was waiting for the syllabus to my own personal hell. I was both terrified of what was coming and sick with a need to know. Midnight. A soft ping from my laptop on the desk cut through the silence. It was the email notification sound, a sound I heard 100 times a day from my work account. But this one felt different. It felt loud. It felt final. My legs were stiff as I walked over to the desk. I hadn't received a personal email in weeks. My inbox was a wasteland of promotional spam and order confirmations. But there it was. One new message. The sender was a jumbled mess of letters and numbers, an address that didn't exist. The subject line was 2 words, all caps. Game rule number 1. My hand trembled as I clicked it open. The body of the email was as stark and cold as the messages on his tablet. What you lost where you began. Find it in 60 minutes. Time starts now. Below the text, a digital timer had already appeared and was counting down. 59 to 58, 59 to 57. My brain felt like a machine grinding without oil. What you lost. Where you began. What did that even mean? Where I began what? My job? My life? The city? It was a riddle designed to make me fail. The numbers on the screen kept falling, each tick a drop of poison in my veins. My eyes darted around the apartment, looking for a clue, for anything out of place. But he left nothing. Where I began. The start of this. The start of the game. When did it begin? Not when he appeared in my room. It had to be before that. He knew things. He had information. My job. Jake. He'd been watching. My thoughts snagged on something. The supermarket. Yesterday. It was the only place I'd been all weekend besides this apartment. A routine trip for frozen pizza and cheap beer. The beginning of a normal, wasted weekend. Could that be it? It felt so random, so mundane, so stupid. But what did I lose? I checked my pockets. Phone, keys, wallet. All here. I opened the wallet. Credit cards, driver's license, a crumpled $20 bill. Nothing missing. I hadn't lost anything. This was impossible. 52 to 14. 52 to 13. Panic began to claw at my throat. I was going to fail the first test. What would happen then? Would he come back? Would he just drop 14 stories again? But this time, take me with him? As if in answer, my laptop screen flickered. The email window vanished. The desktop wallpaper was replaced with a black screen. A single video file sat in the center. The whir of the computer's fans spooled up, filling the room. It was working, but I wasn't touching it. He was. From wherever he was. The video file opened on its own. The play button clicked. It was CCTV footage. Grainy black and white, shot from a high angle. The timestamp in the corner was from yesterday afternoon. I saw the back of a man in a hoodie and jeans standing at a checkout counter. It was me. A ghost of a happier time, just 24 hours ago, completely unaware that my life was about to end. I watched myself on the screen. The video me pulled out his wallet to pay. As he fumbled with his credit card, something small and white slipped from the leather folds. It fluttered to the floor, landing half under the candy rack. Video me didn't notice. He paid, took his bag, and walked out of the frame. The camera stayed fixed on the empty checkout lane. I could just see the corner of the white object on the dirty linoleum floor. The video froze, then zoomed in. The image was blurry, but I didn't need it to be clear. I knew exactly what it was. My blood ran cold. It was a photograph. A small, wallet-sized picture of me and Sarah, my ex-girlfriend, taken years ago on a beach trip. Her laughing, her head on my shoulder. The last picture I had of her. The one I always told myself I should throw away but never could. The one thing I had truly lost. 44 to 31. 44 to 30. Fuck. I bolted. Keys. Wallet. Phone. I slammed out of my apartment, not even bothering to lock the door. What was the point? The locks didn't matter. I sprinted down the hall, hammering the elevator button. Too slow. I threw open the door to the stairwell and plunged down, my feet pounding on the concrete steps, the sound echoing in the narrow space. 14 flights. 13. My lungs burned. 10. My legs were screaming. 6. 3. I burst out into the lobby, startling the night doorman, and pushed through the front doors into the cold night air. My car was parked a block away. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the door open. I threw myself inside, cranked the engine, and peeled out into the empty street. The supermarket was a 15-minute drive. I made it in 7. I ran red lights. I swerved around a street-sweeping truck. The city was a blur of yellow and white lights. Every shadow in every alley looked like him. Every other car felt like it was following me. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I screeched to a halt in the supermarket parking lot. The massive sign was dark. The windows were black mirrors. The main doors were sealed behind a heavy metal gate, pulled down and locked for the night. It was a fortress. I was too late. 31. 05. 31. 04. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel. It was a trap. A test with no solution. He wanted me to run, to panic, to fail. He wanted to watch me break. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new text message. From an unknown number. Side door is unlocked. I looked across the parking lot, to the far side of the building. The employee entrance. A single, windowless metal door in a dark, unlit corner of the lot. This was it. The real test. He wasn't just testing my mind. He was testing my nerve. He was inviting me into his space. I had no choice. I got out of the car, my legs unsteady beneath me. The air was cold. The parking lot was dead quiet. I walked toward the side of the building, my footsteps sounding huge in the silence. The side door was deep in shadow, away from the streetlights. It looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me. I reached for the handle. It was cold, metallic. I expected it to be locked, for this to be another trick. I turned it. It clicked open. The door swung inward with a low groan, revealing a void, not a hint of light. Just pure, absolute blackness. A smell wafted out. The cold, chemical smell of floor cleaner mixed with something else. The scent of stale air. I took a breath. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut a weak, trembling circle in the darkness. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. I was in a stockroom. Towering metal shelves filled with cardboard boxes rose up on either side of me. creating narrow canyons of shadow. My light danced across them. Cereal, canned soup, toilet paper, the mundane guts of the store. I moved forward, my sneakers squeaking on the smooth concrete. I pushed through a set of double-flapped plastic doors and entered the main store. It was worse in here. The space was huge, cavernous. The ceiling was lost in the darkness above. My little phone light was swallowed by the emptiness. The checkout lanes were silent sentinels up front. The long aisles of food stretched away into an ocean of black. It was like standing at the bottom of a dead sea. I had to find the candy rack at the front. I kept my light pointed at the floor, moving slowly, deliberately. Every sound made me jump. The hum of the freezers, the drip of condensation from a cooling unit, my own ragged breathing. There, checkout 4. I swept my light along the floor, under the empty shelves for gum and magazines. And I saw it, the little white square, face down, the photo. I knelt down. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. It felt like I was reaching for bait in a trap. This was too easy. My fingertips touched the cool, glossy paper of the photograph. Click. The sound was sharp, electric, and came from everywhere at once. WHUMP. Every single light in the supermarket flashed on. The overhead fluorescents, the lights in the freezer cases, the display signs, the checkout lamps. The darkness vanished in an instant, replaced by a brutal, sterile, humming brightness. I flinched back, my eyes watering from the sudden glare. I was on my knees in the middle of a checkout aisle. And I was not alone. They were everywhere, in every aisle, standing by the deli counter, grouped near the automatic doors, posed in the bakery section. Dozens of them, mannequins. The store's plastic, lifeless people, men, women, children, all frozen in cheerful commercial poses. But their poses were wrong. Their positions were wrong. They weren't displaying clothes. They weren't arranged for a sale. Every single one of them, from the farthest corners of the produce section to the one standing just 10 feet away, had been turned. Every blank, featureless, plastic head was angled in a single direction. Every single one of them was looking directly at me. The light was a physical thing. It beat down on me, heavy and hot, humming with a frequency that vibrated behind my eyeballs. The sterile, shadowless glare of 1,000 fluorescent tubes killed the world, bleached it of color, and left only the raw, ugly truth. My hand, still clutching the small photo, trembled under the assault. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I was on my knees in checkout 4, a fool in a cathedral of groceries, and I was being watched. Everywhere, from all directions. They ringed the entire store. Plastic men in cheap suits stood frozen by the entrance, their painted-on smiles aimed at me. A plastic family, mom, dad, 2 kids, was posed unnaturally by the magazine racks, their happy, vacant eyes all locked on my position. Down the long aisles, figures stood half-hidden behind displays of cereal boxes and canned beans. By the vibrant reds and greens of the produce section, a line of them stood like soldiers. Beside the glass doors of the dairy coolers, another group. Dozens, maybe 100, and every single one of them, every single blank, featureless plastic head was turned to face me. My first thought was a blast of pure, animal panic. Get out. Get out now. The main entrance was the closest, 30 feet maybe, a straight shot. He was here somewhere, the man in the white mask, hiding behind one of these things, enjoying the show. He set this up. A sick, elaborate prank to watch me lose my mind. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I jammed the photo of Sarah into my pocket. My palm scraped against the dirty linoleum as I pushed myself up. My legs felt weak, unsteady. I kept my eyes on the main doors. The metal gate still pulled down tight behind the glass. It didn't matter. I'd smash through the glass. I'd do anything. I took a step, then another. My sneakers squeaked on the floor, the sound loud enough to make me flinch. The mannequins remained still. Their silence was worse than a scream. It was a suffocating pressure. The air was thick with it. Come on, just a few more feet. They're just plastic. Just a stupid, terrifying prank. I was halfway to the doors when I saw it. The movement. It was in my periphery. The mannequin closest to me, a woman in a blue dress holding a plastic handbag, was at the end of aisle 3. I had been trying so hard not to look directly at any of them, but I couldn't help it. My head snapped toward her. She was still, perfectly still. My mind was playing tricks on me. The stress, the lack of sleep. It had to be. I took a shaky breath and turned back toward the doors, and then I saw it again. This time, I was looking right at it. Her head. It was turning. It wasn't a jerky mechanical movement. It was slow, smooth, silent. Her blank, featureless face, tilted down in a cheerful commercial pose, was now rotating on its neck, lifting, until her empty gaze was level with mine. The perfect white plastic gleamed under the humming lights. My blood turned to ice water. My feet stopped moving. I was rooted to the spot. "What the fuck?" I whispered, the words a dry rasp in my throat. Then another one moved. A male mannequin near the deli counter, 20 feet to my left. His arm, bent at the elbow to display a non-existent watch, slowly straightened. The plastic limb lowered to his side with a quiet, final thud. My brain struggled to process what my eyes were seeing. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. That's when I saw the mask. The head that had turned, the female mannequin, wasn't made of molded plastic. It was a mask. A blank, white, expressionless mask, identical to the one he had worn in my apartment. And beneath the mask, at the collar of the blue dress, was a sliver of black fabric. A black turtleneck. They weren't mannequins, they were people. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. A choked gasp escaped my lips. I took a stumbling step backward, my eyes darting wildly now. I looked at the family by the magazines. They were wearing masks. I looked at the figures in the aisles. All of them. Black clothes under their store outfits. Blank white masks where their faces should be. He wasn't alone. He wasn't one man. He was an army. And the army was beginning to move. Thump. It was a single soft sound, but it came from everywhere at once. Every single one of them had taken one synchronized step forward. My escape route to the main doors was gone. A line of 5 of them now stood between me and the glass, forming a silent, white-masked wall. Thump. Another step. They were closing in. The vast, cavernous space of the supermarket was shrinking, the aisles becoming walls of a cage, and I was the animal trapped inside. My mind screamed. It screamed to run, to fight, to do something, anything. But my body wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed, a statue of terror amidst an army of fake people who were all too real. They didn't rush, they didn't run, they just walked. A slow, measured, deliberate pace, their steps falling in perfect, unnerving unison. The circle got smaller, 10 feet away. 8. I could see the details of their masks now, the way the stark white plastic reflected the harsh lights. I could see the dark, empty eye holes. I backed away, bumping hard into the checkout counter. Metal dug into my spine. There was nowhere left to go. I was cornered. They formed a complete circle around me, a thick ring of silent, masked figures. And then they stopped. The silence returned, heavier than before. The only sound was the incessant hum of the lights and the frantic hammering in my own chest. They just stood there, watching me through their blank eye holes. They weren't attacking. They were just containing me, penning me in. The psychological pressure was immense. It was a vice, crushing my sanity. A space opened up in the circle. 2 of them stepped aside, creating a path. He walked through it. It was him. The one from my apartment. I knew it from the way he moved. A fluid, predatory grace that was completely at odds with the stiff, almost robotic movements of the others. He was wearing the same black tactical gear, the same blank white mask. He stopped about 5 feet from me. He held up the tablet. My eyes were glued to the screen, bracing myself for another cold, typed sentence. Another rule. Another threat. But it wasn't text this time. It was a video feed. The image was me. My own face, pale and slick with sweat. my eyes wide with a terror so profound it made me look like a stranger. It was a live feed, shot from an angle just over his shoulder. I could see the chat window on the right side of the screen, a waterfall of text scrolling by so fast I could only catch snippets. L0. L. Look at him. Piss your pants yet? Do a T. Is this real? This is better than last season. Get him. SCREAM. My stomach clenched. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just for him. This wasn't for them. This was for an audience. My pain, my fear, my desperation, it was a show. A performance being broadcast somewhere for thousands of unseen eyes. A new, more profound layer of horror settled over me. The humiliation was a weapon as sharp as any knife. He lowered the tablet for a moment. His masked face tilted slightly, as if he were studying a piece of art he was particularly proud of. I was his masterpiece of fear. Then, with his free hand, he slowly, deliberately, began to applaud. A single, slow, rhythmic clap. 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 The others joined in. The sound started with a few, then grew into a deafening, synchronized ovation. 100 people in blank white masks, standing in a brightly lit supermarket in the middle of the night, giving me a round of applause for being terrified. The sound hammered at me, an absurd, horrifying thunder. He held up a hand, and the clapping stopped instantly. The silence slammed back in. His fingers moved across the tablet's screen. He typed a few words, his movements economical and precise. Then he turned it to face me one last time. The camera feed was gone, replaced by simple white text on a black background. All caps. Welcome to the Loner. You're our newest star. The words hung in the air, white text on a black screen, a death sentence delivered on a tablet. Welcome to the Loner. You're our newest star. My mind refused to process it. The letters blurred, the screen a smear of light. Star? A show? All of this, the break-in, the photo of Sarah, the creeping dread, this nightmare circus in a grocery store, it wasn't the act of a single madman. It was a production. It was entertainment. The chat window I'd seen, the waterfall of text, L0L, look at him. This is better than last season. They were watching. An audience. The single, rhythmic clapping from the main figure had stopped. The thunderous ovation from the masked army had fallen silent. The only sound left was the electric hum from the lights above, a sound that drilled into my skull. My fear, which had been a hot, sharp spike of adrenaline, began to change. It curdled. It twisted into something else, something heavy and black and full of acid. Rage. It wasn't a noble, heroic anger. It was a filthy, cornered animal rage. The rage of total humiliation. My terror, my sweat, my pounding heart. It was all just content. A product to be consumed by faceless ghouls staring at a screen. The sheer, idiotic pointlessness of it all set my blood on fire. I wasn't a victim. I was a sitcom character in a snuff film. I looked from the tablet to the mask of the man holding it. The blank, white surface told me nothing. It was a canvas, and he had painted my fear all over it. A space and the circle of white masks parted. Not for him. The line of silent figures simply stepped back, creating an aisle. It wasn't an escape route. It was a red carpet. At the far end of the newly formed corridor, near the frozen foods section, a figure sat on a black canvas chair, the kind a movie director would use. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wore a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than my car. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed. His face was weathered but handsome, with sharp, intelligent eyes that were fixed on me. He looked calm. He looked bored. As I stared at him, he brought his hands together and began to applaud, a slow, deliberate clap that echoed in the huge space. "Bravo," he called out, his voice smooth and amplified, as if by a hidden microphone. It was cultured, relaxed. "Bravo, Leo. Truly, a magnificent performance." My name. He knew my name. Hearing it out loud in this place, from this man, felt like a violation. "The facial expression when you realized they weren't mannequins," he continued, standing up and taking a leisurely stroll down the aisle toward me. The raw panic in your eyes. That's not something you can teach. That's pure, uncut talent. A 10 out of 10. The viewers are ecstatic. He walked past the masked figures as if they were furniture. They didn't move. They just stood, their blank faces tracking his progress. He stopped about 10 feet from me, next to the main figure who still held the tablet. The man in charge. The director. "I'm sure you have questions," the director said, a thin, patronizing smile on his face. He gestured to the masked circle around me. "This is your supporting cast. Don't worry, they're professionals." He then gestured to the main figure next to him. "This is the technician. He handles the interactive elements of the show." The technician raised the tablet slightly, as if taking a bow. "What do you want?" I managed to force the words out. My voice was a dry croak. The director's smile widened. "Want? Leo, we already have it. We want a show. And you are going to give it to us." He began to pace slowly, his expensive leather shoes making soft, confident clicks on the linoleum floor. "The Loner. It's our highest-rated program. A simple concept, really. We take an individual, someone isolated, someone the world won't miss for a while, and we place them in a curated environment of escalating psychological distress. We broadcast it live on a private network. Our subscribers pay a premium for authenticity. No scripts for the star, no special effects, just real fear. And you, my friend, you are a natural." My fists clenched. The rage was a physical pressure in my chest. "You're all insane." "Insane is a matter of perspective," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "But let's get to the new rules, shall we? Because the game has changed. This isn't just about your apartment anymore. Now, the world is your set." He snapped his fingers. The technician's fingers flew across the tablet. He turned it to face me. It was a split screen, showing camera feeds from 4 different locations. My apartment building's lobby, the street outside my window, the hallway on my floor, the stairwell. "There is no escape, Leo," the director said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Everywhere you go, we will have eyes. Every public space, every street corner, your workplace, the coffee shop you like on Elm Street. We have assets." He took another step closer. The smell of his expensive cologne was sickening. "Every person you interact with could be one of my actors. The cashier, the mailman, the friendly stranger who asks you for directions. Anyone. You'll never know who is real and who is playing a part. Your entire life is now a Truman Show from hell." A cold dread began to extinguish the fire of my rage. I thought of Alex, my one friend in this city, my one lifeline. "My friend," I started. "Alex?" The director's smile was predatory. He knew. Of course he knew. "Ah, yes, Alex. A loyal friend. We had to be very careful with him." The technician tapped on the tablet again, and a new screen appeared. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation. "Alex? Dude, you good? Haven't heard from you. Me. Something's happening. Crazy shit. I need help. Alex? Cops? Me. Can't. It's complicated. Just, I need to see you." The conversation was from yesterday, the one I'd had with Alex. But then, there was another message beneath it. A message I had never received. It was from Alex. "Alex? Sorry, man, can't. Brenda's sick. Big family thing. Talk tomorrow." "He never sent you that last message, did he?" the director asked softly. "We intercepted it. And we sent him a text from your number telling him you were fine. Just stressed with work. Then we made him a very generous offer. An offer that a guy struggling with his student loans found very persuasive. All he had to do was agree to read a few lines for us, if and when you called again. He took the deal, Leo. He sold you out for $50,000. The floor fell out from under me. The cold dread became a black, bottomless chasm. Alex, the one person I trusted. He was one of them. A part of the show. "You're completely alone, Leo," the director said, his voice a hammer blow. "That is the very soul of the show. The Loner." That was it. The final wire snapped. The rage came back, not as heat, but as a white, blinding light. The rational part of my brain shut down. There was no logic, no planning, only a primal, screaming need to wipe the smug, satisfied look off the director's face, to make him feel a fraction of the helplessness I felt. I lunged. A roar tore from my throat, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. I threw myself forward, hands outstretched, my fingers hooked into claws aimed for his throat. I never made it. It was impossibly fast. Two of the masked figures from the circle blurred into motion. They didn't tackle me. They didn't hit me. They moved with a brutal, practiced efficiency. One grabbed my right arm, the other my left. My forward momentum stopped dead, my joints screaming in protest. A third figure stepped behind me, kicking the back of my knees. I buckled, forced to the ground. My chin hit the dirty floor with a crack that sent stars across my vision. They held me there, pinned, my face pressed against the cold, grimy linoleum. I struggled, thrashing like a fish on a deck, but it was useless. Their grips were like steel vices. I could see the director's expensive shoes walk into my line of sight. He crouched down, bringing his perfectly handsome face level with mine. He wasn't even breathing hard. He just looked amused. "Feisty," he said, clicking his tongue. "Very good. The audience loves a fighter. That was an excellent beat. Great for the mid-season ratings." He looked at me, pinned and powerless, and he laughed. A soft, genuine chuckle. "But you must understand," he said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate whisper. "Every action you take is an action I have anticipated. Every outburst, every moment of defiance. It's all part of the narrative I'm building. Your rebellion doesn't break the script, Leo. It is the script." He leaned in closer, his lips almost touching my ear. The world narrowed to his voice, his scent, and the filth on the floor. "Let me give you some friendly advice, star to director," he whispered, his tone suddenly devoid of all amusement. It was flat, cold, deadly. "The last boy we had, our star from season 3, he was a lot like you, full of fire. He refused to cooperate. He tried to fight back at every turn. It made for some compelling television, I'll admit, but it was inconvenient." He paused. I could hear the hum of the lights. I could feel my own frantic pulse hammering in my neck. "He had a mother," the director continued, his whisper a sliver of ice in my ear. "An old woman living alone in a small town in Ohio. One night, while her son was busy being a hero, she had a terrible accident, a fall down the stairs. A faulty handrail, the police said. So tragic, so avoidable." He pulled back slightly, his sharp eyes boring into mine. "Your mother's name is Carol, isn't it? Lives at 427 Maple Drive in Covington. Lovely little house. I've seen pictures. You don't want anything to happen to her handrails, do you, Leo?" And just like that, the rage was gone. The fear was gone. Everything was gone, replaced by a single, monolithic, and absolute horror, a cold so profound it felt like death itself. He wasn't just trapping me in a show. He was holding a gun to my mother's head from 1,000 miles away. This wasn't a cage of cameras and actors. It was a cage of love and consequence. The masked figures released me. They didn't help me up. They just let go and stepped back into the silent circle. I lay there on the floor, the fight drained out of me, the cold of the linoleum seeping into my bones. I was a star, and my first performance was to learn how to play by the rules. The ride back was silent, not a word from the masked figures who shoved me into the back of a windowless van. The van didn't smell of anything, just cold industrial metal. I was a package being returned to sender, a prop being placed back on its set. They didn't cuff me, they didn't tie me up, they didn't need to. The threat to my mother was a leash made of my own heart, and they held the end of it. My rage was gone. My fear was a low, constant hum, like a refrigerator. What was left was something else. A piece of glass, sharp and clear, in the center of my mind. Play the part. Play the game. Find a way to break it. They pushed me out of the van and into the lobby of my building. The night doorman, Mr. Henderson, didn't look up from his newspaper. An actor. Or just a man who knew not to look. They escorted me to the elevator, rode with me to the 4th floor, and guided me to the door of 4B. My door. One of them produced my own key, unlocked the door, and pushed me inside. The door clicked shut behind me. I heard the lock turn. I was home. I was in prison. The first thing I did was stand perfectly still. I didn't turn on the lights. I listened. The familiar hum of the city outside my window was still there, the groan of the building's old pipes. But there was a new sound, a tiny, almost inaudible whirring. My eyes scanned the dark room, adjusting. I saw them now. Small black domes I hadn't noticed before. One tucked into the corner, where the wall met the ceiling. Another on my bookshelf, disguised as a paperweight. A pinhole lens in the smoke detector. My life was a set. And the director was watching. Fine, let him watch. I walked to the kitchen, my movements deliberate. I was playing Leo the Broken Man. I opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water. My hand shook. That was real. I let it shake. Let them see it. I drank. I went to the living room and sat on the couch. I stared at the blank TV screen. My apartment, my sanctuary, felt like a stranger's house. Every object was a potential prop, every corner a hiding place for a camera. The game had changed. So I had to change with it. In my mind, I started taking inventory, not of things to fight with, of things to use. The heavy lamp, the loose floorboard near the window, the small, nondescript USB drive I kept taped to the underside of my desk, loaded with a nasty little piece of work a paranoid data security friend gave me years ago. A kill switch, he'd called it, designed to flood a network with garbage data and trigger system-wide crashes. He told me to use it only in a worst-case scenario. This felt like a worst-case scenario. My laptop, sitting on the coffee table, lit up. A black screen. White text appeared. New mission. Puzzle box. Beneath it, a timer started counting down from 15 minutes. A window opened, filled with a complex grid of numbers and symbols. A logic puzzle. My blood ran cold. This was part of it, the escalating psychological distress. Pointless, demeaning tasks under pressure for their amusement. I stared at the screen. I had to play along, but I had to get to that USB drive. My desk was across the small room, a 10-foot journey that felt like a mile under the silent gaze of the cameras. I let out a shaky breath, a good performance for the viewers. I picked up the laptop, my movements jerky. I stood up and paced. I ran a hand through my hair. I was the very picture of a man on the edge. I carried the laptop over to my desk and sat down. My back was now to the camera on the bookshelf. The one in the smoke detector above me had a bad angle on the space under the desk. The one in the corner of the room was my main problem. On the screen, I started working the puzzle. I clicked on a few numbers. I intentionally made an obvious mistake. A loud, obnoxious buzzer sound erupted from the laptop speakers. A red X flashed on the screen. Error. Try again. The error message stayed on the screen for 3 solid seconds before the puzzle reappeared. 3 seconds. My heart hammered. Was it long enough? I hunched over the desk, pretending to be frustrated. I muttered under my breath. I don't get it. This is stupid. For the cameras. For the audience. Meanwhile, my right hand, hidden from the corner camera by my own body, slid under the lip of the desk. My fingers brushed against the smooth plastic of the electrical tape. I peeled it back. The tiny drive fell into my waiting palm. It was no bigger than my thumbnail. I closed my fist around it. I tried the puzzle again. Click. Click. Buzzer. Error. Try again. 3 more seconds. My left hand moved the mouse on the screen. My right hand, shaking now, brought the USB drive up to the side of the laptop. The port was right there, a dark little hole. I took a deep breath. My chest was tight. I could feel their eyes on me. The director, the technician, the faceless subscribers. Come on, I whispered. I made it sound like I was talking to the puzzle. I made another mistake. On purpose. Buzzer. As the red X flashed, my right hand moved. The drive slid into the port, a soft, solid click that was drowned out by the noise from the speakers. It was in. My finger was on the trackpad with my left hand, while my right thumb was still on the drive, ready to pull it out. An auto-run window, a tiny thing I designed myself, was supposed to pop up. It would be invisible behind the massive error message. I had programmed it to copy the virus and execute it in one go. I glanced at the clock. 9 minutes left. A voice, smooth and amplified, filled the room. It came from everywhere at once. The director. Leo, don't play dumb. We've seen your college transcripts. You're not this stupid. Solve the puzzle. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a threat. The sound drilled right through my skull. My blood turned to ice. They knew I was stalling. The pressure crushed down on me. My plan felt thin, pathetic. They had anticipated everything. My mind raced. I needed a distraction, something real, something that would justify my fumbling. My eyes darted around the desk, the glass of water from the kitchen. It was right there. My hand started to tremble for real. I wasn't acting anymore. This was it. One chance. I leaned in, close to the screen, pretending to focus intently. Okay, I mumbled, a frantic edge to my voice. My left hand hovered over the trackpad. With a sudden, convulsive jerk, my right arm shot out and knocked over the glass of water. It wasn't a small spill. Water cascaded across the desk, flooding over the keyboard of the laptop. Shit! I yelled, jumping back. It was the perfect, panicked reaction. I scrambled for a sweatshirt lying on my chair, frantically dabbing at the keyboard, at the pool of water spreading over the wood. Shit! 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 Under the cover of this chaos, with my body shielding my actions, my left finger clicked the trackpad. Once. On the spot where the invisible auto-run window would be. The director's voice came again, laced with annoyance. Careful with the equipment, Leo. It's expensive. I'm sorry, I'm trying, I said, my voice cracking. I kept dabbing at the keyboard, my movements frantic and clumsy. At the same time, my right hand, still hidden, gripped the tiny USB drive and pulled. It came free. I palmed it, my fingers squeezing it tight as I continued my frantic clean-up. I swept my hand across the desk, knocking the drive onto the floor, where it disappeared into the shadows under my chair. Gone. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. Did it work? Did I click it in time? There was no way to know. I took a deep breath. Okay, I'm okay. I sat back down, wiping my wet hands on my jeans. I had to finish the puzzle. I had to act normal. With a still trembling hand, I clicked the final symbols into place. The final number. I hit enter. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen changed. Mission complete. Time remaining. 3:14. A wave of relief so intense it made me dizzy washed over me. I slumped in my chair, panting. I had done it. Then it started. The mission complete text flickered. Once, twice. It vanished, replaced by a garbled line of code. Then the entire screen blinked off, then on again. A system error window popped onto the screen. Title, Colonel_Panic. Before I could even read the text, another one popped up over it. And another. And another. They cascaded across the display, a waterfall of digital failure. The screen flickered violently, strobing between the desktop, a black screen, and the avalanche of error messages. The virus was working. What the hell? The director's voice was no longer smooth. It was sharp, angry. Technician, what is that? Is that the water damage? A different, more flustered voice crackled through the speaker, distant, like it was being picked up by the director's mic. No, sir, that's not. The hardware is fine. This is a software-side cascade failure. Something got in. Something is flooding the local network. Get it offline. Isolate a system now, the director barked. The screen went black. Son of a bitch, the director snarled. The sound was pure, undiluted fury. Did you see him do anything? No, sir, he just spilled the water. We are scrubbing the footage now, but scrub it faster. Silence. A beautiful, victorious silence. I stared at the blank screen, a slow, wide smile spreading across my face. It was the first real smile I'd had in days. I had thrown a rock into their machine. I had made the gods bleed. Then the dead screen flickered back to life. It wasn't the desktop. It wasn't the error messages. It was a single stark white window on a black background. like a command prompt. It wasn't glitching. It was stable. It wasn't from them. This was something else. A cursor blinked once. Then text appeared, typed out in real time. Greater than I see you. Greater than I am not one of them. Greater than the old water tower, east side of the tracks. Midnight. Greater than come alone. Greater than delete this. The cursor blinked at the end of the last line. The director's angry voice was still a faint murmur in the background, but it felt a million miles away. My world had narrowed to that small box of text. A trap? Another layer of the game? Or was it something else? A hand reaching out from the dark. My victory felt hollow. The piece of glass in my mind shattered. This wasn't the end of their game. It was the start of a new one. Less than / body greater than, less than HTML greater than. The cursor blinked. A tiny pulsating black line against the impossible white of the message box. My victory had lasted all of 10 seconds. My heart, which had been a wild drum solo of triumph, now felt like a cold, heavy stone in my chest. The director's angry, distant voice was static, a sound from another world. My world was this box, this text. I see you. I am not one of them. The old water tower, east side of the tracks. Midnight. Come alone. Delete this. A trap. It had to be a trap. Another layer to their sick game. A new set piece. The mysterious ally. It was all part of the script. My mind screamed it. But another part of me, a small, desperate part, clung to the words. I am not one of them. What if it was real? What if someone on the inside was fighting back? Hope is a poison when you have nothing. It makes you reckless. I had nothing. I was already dead. The only question was how I went out. As a puppet on a string, or on my own 2 feet. The director's voice suddenly cut back in, clearer this time, probably through a different speaker they had hidden somewhere. Technician, get a maintenance team ready to go to his unit. I want a full diagnostic. We go in 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes. My eyes darted from the screen to the kitchen. My thoughts were no longer a debate. They were a single, sharp command. Move. I didn't delete the message. I couldn't risk the keystrokes being logged. I slammed the laptop shut. A definitive, physical action. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, forcing my body to move smoothly, not like a man with a plan. Just a man who was thirsty. I opened a cupboard, grabbed a glass. My hands were shaking again. I let them. Let the cameras see the broken man. In front of the sink, out of sight of the main camera in the corner, my eyes locked on the toaster. A cheap, chrome box. Next to it, a stack of dish towels. An idea, ugly and desperate, sparked in my brain. An accident. Another accident. They liked watching me fumble. I would give them a show. I grabbed a dish towel, a blue checkered one. My fingers fumbled with the toaster's lever. I shoved a corner of the towel down into one of the slots, then pushed the lever down. It locked with a soft click. My heart hammered. This was insane. I turned back to the sink, turned on the tap, and held the glass under it. Acting. Always acting. I filled the glass slowly. Took a sip. The metallic tang of the building's old pipes filled my mouth. 1 second. 2. 3. A smell. Acrid. The faint scent of burning cotton. I stayed perfectly still, my back to the toaster. 4. 5. A thin, gray tendril of smoke curled up from the slot. It rose past my shoulder, a pale ghost in the kitchen light. I didn't look. I just kept my eyes on the window over the sink. 6. 7. The smoke was thicker now. A soft orange glow started to emanate from the toaster. Now! I spun around, my eyes wide. What the? I yelled, dropping the glass. It shattered in the sink. The manufactured panic was becoming real. The towel was no longer smoking. It was burning. A small, hungry flame licked at the fabric. Beep, beep, beep. The smoke detector on the ceiling screamed. It was a piercing, hellish sound. Louder than the laptop, louder than the director. It was the sound of chaos. I ran from the kitchen, coughing, waving a hand in front of my face. The smoke was thicker than I expected, billowing out, creating a gray haze that filled the top half of the room. The camera lenses would be useless. Fire! There's a fire! I screamed, hoping my voice carried through their mics. I stumbled through the living room, heading for the front door, the obvious escape route. I rattled the knob. Locked, of course. For the show. For the drama. But I wasn't going that way. I veered to the right, toward the large window that led to the fire escape. The smoke was a thick curtain now. I could barely see the bookshelf across the room. The alarm was still shrieking, a relentless pulse that matched the frantic beat of my heart. I grabbed the heavy lamp from the end table. I didn't hesitate. I swung it with all the force I had against the window pane. The glass exploded outwards in a shower of glittering shards. The sudden rush of cold night air was a shock to my lungs. The scream of the alarm was now mixed with the distant wail of city sirens. I dropped the lamp, scrambled through the broken frame, cutting my hand on a shard of glass. I didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline was a hot fire in my veins. My feet hit the metal grate of the fire escape. I didn't look back. I just ran. Down the rickety stairs, my footsteps clanging against the iron, a sound swallowed by the night and the alarms. I hit the alley pavement and didn't stop. I ran, like a man possessed. Freedom. It tasted like cold air and blood. The triumph lasted for half a block. As I burst out of the alley onto a side street, gasping for breath, I heard it. Not a siren, not a voice. A high-pitched, electric whir. My head snapped up. There, hovering 20 feet above the intersection. A black drone. A single red light glowed on its underbelly, an unblinking cyclops eye. It pivoted, its camera locking onto me. My blood ran cold. I looked down the street. A black, windowless van was parked at the far end, its engine rumbling. Another one pulled around the corner behind me, cutting off my retreat. The alley wasn't a blind spot. The fire escape wasn't an escape. It was just a different exit from the stage. Then the voice came. Not from my apartment. It came from the drone. Amplified. Booming. It echoed off the brick buildings. A god's voice from a metal insect. The director. "Run, Leo! Run! That's it! Show our subscribers how much you want it! Show them your desperation!" My brief moment of freedom curdled into pure horror. This wasn't an escape. This was Act 2. My flight for life was just another action sequence for their viewers. My heart pounded, not with effort, but with a sickening, powerless rage. I was a rat, and they just opened a new door in the maze. "Give them a show, Leo. To the tracks. Let's see if you can make it." The tracks. The water tower. They knew. Of course they knew. The message wasn't from a friend. It was from him. It was a script. A destination. Another trap. But what choice did I have? Stand here and be herded back into the van? No. If I was going to be a puppet, I would run until my strings snapped. I broke into a desperate sprint. The drone kept pace above me, its whirring a constant, mocking companion. I ran past blurred storefronts, past the faces of late-night pedestrians who stared for a moment before looking away. More actors? Or just people who knew not to get involved? The entire world felt like a set. The black vans kept their distance, ghosting me, hurting me. I felt like an animal being driven to the slaughterhouse. Every step was a surrender. Every breath was a curse. The industrial wasteland east of the tracks was a mess of abandoned warehouses and rust. The streetlights here were few and far between, broken or flickering. I could see it now, a skeletal silhouette against the hazy city glow. The old water tower, a monster of rust and steel. I ran. My lungs burned. My legs were screaming. The drone was still there, a persistent fly I couldn't swat. I reached the chain-link fence at the base of the tower and vaulted it, tearing my jeans. The ladder was cold and slick with dew. I started to climb. Hand over hand, my body screaming, the city shrinking below me. The drone circled the tower, its red light painting stripes across the rusted metal as it watched my ascent. The top was a small circular platform. As my head cleared the edge, I saw him, a figure silhouetted against the lights of the city. He turned. My heart stopped. It was Mark. My friend. My college roommate. The guy I'd called just last week to complain about work. But the look on his face wasn't Mark's. There was no easy smile, no spark in his eye. Just a hollow, terrified guilt. He was pale, shaking. "Leo!" he breathed. The drone hovered just out of earshot, its camera still trained on us. "Mark, what the hell? Are you part of this? Are they making you do this?" The words tumbled out of me, a frantic torrent. "They made me," he whispered, his eyes darting towards the drone. "Leo, they have my sister. They sent me pictures. They told me to bring you here, to play the part of the mysterious ally." My world tilted on its axis. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. To use my own friend, to twist that bond into another scene for their amusement. "Listen," he said, talking fast, his voice a low, urgent hiss. He shoved something into my hand. It was a small black box, heavy for its size. "This is a jammer, military grade. It's not part of their script. I swapped it. The prop they gave me was a fake. This is real. Turn it on. It will fry their signal, the drone, the cameras. It will give you a few minutes, a few real minutes." I stared at the box in my hand. A few minutes. It felt like an eternity. "Mark, why? I'm sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry." His face was a mask of agony. He was an actor, but this performance was real. As my fingers closed around the jammer, I saw it, a tiny, brilliant red dot. It appeared on the center of Mark's chest, a perfect, crimson circle on his jacket. I frowned, my brain too slow to process. What was it? A new special effect? Mark saw me looking. He looked down at his own chest. His expression didn't change. It was a look of resignation, of finality. He looked back at me, and a sad, broken smile touched his lips. "You have to expose them, Leo. For me. A sound. Not loud. A sharp crack that cut through the night air, from a rooftop somewhere far away." Mark's body jerked. His eyes went wide with a final, silent surprise. He stumbled backwards, a step, then two. His hand flew to his chest. The jammer fell from my grasp, clattering onto the metal platform. Mark pitched over the edge of the platform and disappeared into the darkness below. I didn't hear him hit the ground. I didn't hear anything. The drone still whirred. The city still hummed. But my world was absolute silence. I stood there, my hand empty, my friend gone. The director didn't tolerate betrayal. He didn't allow for improvisation. This wasn't a game. It was an execution. And I was the next one on the list. The silence was a physical thing. It pressed in on me, heavier than the city noise that had just been my soundtrack. The drone's whir was gone. The director's voice was gone. Mark was gone. A single sharp crack, and my world had folded in on itself, leaving nothing but the cold wind and the vast, empty space where my friend had been standing a moment ago. Below, the city lights swam in a blurry, indifferent sea. They knew nothing. They felt nothing. I stood frozen. My mind was a white screen, blank. My entire existence had shrunk to this circular metal platform, a cage suspended 50 stories in the air. Time stretched and snapped. A minute? A second? I couldn't tell. My gaze drifted down from the empty air to the grated floor. The jammer. The small black box Mark had pushed into my hand lay a few feet away, a forgotten piece of some other, more hopeful reality. A hot, ugly feeling began to bubble up from the pit of my stomach. It wasn't grief. Grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. It was rage, pure, white-hot and clarifying. It burned away the shock. It burned away the fear. They had killed him. They had used him, twisted his love for his sister into a performance. And when he deviated from their script, they deleted him. An actor gets fired. A character gets written out. Mark got a bullet in the chest. My legs finally obeyed me. I stumbled forward, my knees screaming, and snatched the jammer. It was heavy, solid, real. This wasn't a prop. This was Mark's last act. His only act of rebellion. The rage in my chest gave my hands a purpose. My eyes darted around the platform. Another object, lying near the edge. A phone. His phone. It must have fallen when he did. The screen was dark. A new sound cut through my focus. Below me, the squeal of tires on pavement. A van door sliding open, with a low, metallic groan. They were coming. The drone was down, the signal was dead, but they had a last known location. They wouldn't just give up. They would send their stagehands to collect the props. Me. My choice was clear. There was no choice. I wasn't running anymore. Running was what they wanted. Running was the show. This was something else. This was for Mark. I scrambled over and grabbed the phone. My thumb pressed the side button. The screen lit up. Unlocked. Mark never locked his phone. He always said it was a waste of time. My breath caught in my throat. My blood-smeared thumb swiped across the screen, leaving a red streak. I didn't see apps. I saw a weapon. My first instinct screamed, "Call 911." A pathetic, pre-game instinct. Call who? The police? How did I know they weren't on the payroll? Extras in the biggest production on Earth. Any call I made could be rerouted, recorded, twisted. A call for help would just become another plot point, another clip for their subscribers. Watch the desperate rat try to call for help that will never come. No, I couldn't trust their system. I had to use my own. My thumb, shaking now, found the icon. A familiar bluebird. He was always on it, posting stupid memes, pictures from hikes, promoting his band. I tapped it, the feed loaded, and I saw the number at the top of his profile. The number of followers. 27,432. My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't a million. It wasn't a celebrity's account. But it was a network. It was an audience. It was 27,000 windows I could throw a rock through. 27,000 potential witnesses that weren't on the director's payroll. A loud clang echoed from below. My head snapped up. I crawled to the edge of the platform and peered down into the darkness. A shape. Another. Moving up the ladder. Not climbing. Scrambling. Fast. Like spiders. They were wearing black. Tactical gear. Masks. They were coming. My mind went into overdrive. I had seconds. Not minutes. Seconds. The rage that had been a steady flame now exploded into a bonfire. My fingers were a blur on the screen. I knew the layout of the app by heart. I navigated to the live video function. A huge purple button stared back at me. Go live. Clang, clang, clang. Closer. The sounds were rhythmic, relentless. The sound of my own execution approaching. They were halfway up. I pressed the button. A 3-second countdown appeared on the screen. 3, 2, 1. The screen flickered, and my own face stared back at me, caught in the harsh light of the phone. I was pale, my eyes wide and wild. A red light blinked in the corner. Live. And next to it, a number, 17, 48, 92. It was climbing. Fast. People were getting the notification. Mark Jensen is live. My throat was dry. I swallowed, the sound raw in my ears. The words had to be right. They had to be fast. Clang, clang, clang. The top of the head appeared over the edge of the ladder, rungs just a few feet below the platform. Another followed. They were almost here. I angled the phone, making sure my face was clear. I took a ragged breath, and I didn't speak. I screamed, "My name is Leo Parker! This is not a game! This is not a TV show!" My voice cracked, raw and desperate. I could see the viewer count ticking up past 1,000. Comments were flying by too fast to read. A blur of text. "They're watching me! They're watching all of us! It's a show called The Loner!" I shoved the phone towards the edge of the platform, pointing it down into the blackness where Mark had fallen. "They killed my friend! They just killed him! His name was Mark Jensen! They shot him!" Thump! The first man vaulted onto the platform. He was a shadow, A faceless nightmare in black armor and a ballistic mask. He had a weapon in his hand, not a gun, but something that looked like a taser or a stun baton. A second man swung his leg over the edge behind him. I didn't flinch. I turned the phone back on them, making sure the camera caught every detail of their inhuman uniforms. "Look! Here they are, the stars of the show. Is this what you paid for?" I yelled, my voice a broken roar against the wind. The number on the screen was over 5,000 now. 5,147. 5,298. It was working. It had to be working. The first masked figure charged. He didn't say a word. There was no dialogue for the extras, just action. He lunged, reaching not for me, but for the phone. I spun away, holding the phone aloft like a torch. "You have to expose them!" For me, for Mark! I was screaming Mark's last words back at the world, a desperate echo. The second man was on me. He tackled me from the side, a heavy, brutal impact that drove the air from my lungs. I hit the metal grate hard. Pain shot up my spine. My grip on the phone loosened. It skittered across the platform, the screen still lit, still broadcasting. The first man was on it in a second, his heavy boot coming down. Crunch! The sound of the screen shattering was the last thing I heard clearly. The light from the phone died. The little red live icon blinked out of existence. Darkness. A hand grabbed my hair and slammed my face into the cold, grated metal. The taste of rust and blood filled my mouth. A flash of light, a searing pain in my neck, and then my muscles turned to water. The world dissolved into a buzzing, formless gray. My last conscious thought wasn't of Mark, or of my own death. It was the image of that number on the screen, climbing, climbing, climbing. A seed planted in a hurricane, sent out into the world. I didn't know if it would land. I didn't know if it would grow, but it was out there. And they couldn't take that back. The blackness swallowed me whole. The first thing I heard was a siren. Not the distant, mournful wail of the city, but a sharp, piercing shriek that was getting closer. It was a sound of order, of a world outside the game. My cheek was pressed against something cold and hard with a crosshatch pattern. The rooftop. A groan escaped my lips, a sound I barely recognized as my own. Lights flashed, strobing red and blue against my eyelids. I forced them open. The world was a mess of blurry figures in dark uniforms, of metal glinting under new, harsh lights. A hand touched my shoulder, gentle. "Sir? Can you hear me? My name is Chris. I'm a paramedic." The voice wasn't the director's. It was real. It was human. I tried to sit up, a firework of pain exploding in my neck where they'd tased me. The paramedic eased me back down. He shone a small light in my eyes, and I flinched away. Everything was too bright, too loud. The silence of the rooftop had been violated, replaced by the crackle of radios and the heavy stomp of boots. They were everywhere. Cops. Real cops. They had the masked men in cuffs. The stagehands. They were kneeling on the metal grate, heads bowed. Their power was gone. They were just men in black gear, their faces now exposed and shockingly ordinary. Pale. Sweaty. Scared. It was over. The thought was so huge, so impossible, I couldn't fully grasp it. I felt a thick blanket being wrapped around me. I started to shake. They helped me to my feet. Every muscle screamed. As two officers guided me toward the ladder, my world tilting with every step, I saw him. The director. He wasn't in cuffs. He stood calmly, talking to a man in a suit. A detective, probably. He looked different without the high-tech control room around him. Smaller, but his eyes were the same. Cold, calculating, and completely without fear. Our eyes met across the chaotic scene. I expected to see panic, defeat, remorse. I saw none of it. He looked right through me, and then his lips curved into the slightest smile. It wasn't a smile of warmth or relief. It was a smile of satisfaction. Of a job well done. He gave me a slow, deliberate wink, a single, knowing blink. Then he leaned in slightly toward the detective, though his voice carried on the wind, clear and sharp, and aimed directly at me. "Best season ever," he said, his voice a low murmur. "The ratings are going to be through the roof." Ice flooded my veins. The officers holding my arms had to tighten their grip as my legs gave out. What did he just say? The cop looked at me, his expression a mix of pity and impatience. "Easy, son. You're in shock." I tried to speak, to scream, to tell them they didn't understand. But no words came out. They led me down the ladder, away from the man who had owned my life, away from the smirk that promised the horror was far from over. The next 6 months were a blur of headlines and therapy sessions. The Loner Horror Show exposed. Broadcast butchers jailed for life. The director, whose real name turned out to be Arthur Crane, and his key staff were convicted on a mountain of charges. Kidnapping, manslaughter for Mark, invasion of privacy on a scale that made lawmakers scramble to invent new laws. The world was outraged. For a while. I moved. A new apartment in a different state. A small, ground-floor place with too many locks on the door. I told myself it was a fresh start. But you can't outrun the echoes in your own head. Every phone notification made my heart leap into my throat. I put tape over the camera on my new laptop. I couldn't be in a room without checking for blind spots. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, my hand reaching for a phone that wasn't there, my mind screaming at the ghost of a rising viewer count. Dr. Evans said it was PTSD. She said the paranoia would fade with time. She told me to re-engage with the world. I tried. But the world felt different now. When I walked down the street, I didn't see people. I saw a potential audience. Every stranger's gaze felt like a camera lens. They all knew my face. I was Leo Parker, the guy from the death show. The survivor, a walking, talking piece of trauma porn. The system had worked. Justice was served. That's what everyone said. Crane was locked away. His network was dismantled. It was over. I repeated it to myself like a mantra every morning, staring at my pale, haunted face in the mirror. It's over. It's over. It's over. But it never felt true. There was a splinter of ice in my heart, put there by a single wink on a rooftop, and it would not melt. It was a Tuesday. Raining. I was making coffee, trying to appreciate the simple boringness of it all, the hiss of the machine, the smell of the grounds. Normal things. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. The coffee maker gurgled, oblivious. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden quiet. I never got visitors. Dr. Evans did video calls. I got my groceries delivered, always left on the doorstep. No one rings my bell. I crept to the door, my bare feet silent on the wood floor. My breath came in shallow puffs. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but on the doormat was a box. A plain brown cardboard box, about the size of a shoebox. No labels, no stamps, no return address, just my apartment number, 3B, written in a neat black marker. My first instinct was to call the police. My second was to just leave it there, kick it down the hall, let someone else deal with it. But I couldn't. It was for me. I knew it, the same way an animal knows when a predator is near. This was a message. My hand trembled as I undid the 3 locks on the door. It felt like I was opening my own tomb. I snatched the box, pulled it inside, and slammed the door, locking it again. My back pressed against the wood. The box held out in front of me like it was radioactive. I sat on the floor of my living room for a long time, just staring at it. The tape was clear. The cardboard was clean. Finally, my fingers, clumsy and stiff, tore at the tape. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. Inside, nestled in black foam, was a tablet. Brand new, sleek and black and cold to the touch. It wasn't an iPad, not a Samsung. There was no brand name on it at all, just a smooth, featureless black screen. The moment my fingers brushed its surface, the screen lit up. I didn't press a button, it just came to life. There were no icons, no home screen. It was already on a web page. The background was stark black. The text was a glitchy, blood-red font. At the top, a logo that made my stomach turn inside out, a stylized eye, weeping a single binary tear. And below it, the words that stopped my breath. The Loner. Season 2. The auction is now live. My mind refused to process it. It was impossible. Crane was in a supermax prison. His people were locked up. It couldn't be. My shaking thumb scrolled down. The page was a forum, a dark web marketplace of human misery. People weren't bidding with money. They were bidding with something called view cred. Posts detailed how to earn it. Successfully dox a target. Submit verifiable surveillance. Recruit a new patron. They were bidding for a chance to be part of the new production crew. They were bidding for the right to choose the next victim, to design the new game. It wasn't a show run by one man anymore. It was a franchise, an open-source nightmare. Crane hadn't created a TV show. He'd started a movement. Then the screen flickered and changed. The forum disappeared, replaced by a live video feed. The connection was flawless. The image was high definition. It was a shaky first-person view, as if from a hidden body camera. I was looking into a small, sparsely furnished apartment. Boxes were everywhere. Someone was moving in. A young woman with her back to the camera hummed to herself as she unpacked a box of books. The feed was stable for a moment. Then the camera panned around the room, taking in the details. The single bed, the cheap desk, the window that looked out onto a brick wall. A notification popped up in the corner of my screen. New target acquired. Initializing profile. The woman sighed, running a hand through her messy blonde hair. She pulled out her phone and held it up. Ugh, she said to herself, her voice tinny through the tablet speaker. Of course, the Wi-Fi here is total garbage. A new protagonist. A new Nan Hien. The horror wasn't over. It was starting again. My blood ran cold. The whole world seemed to tilt on its axis. My desperate act on that rooftop. My broadcast to the world. It wasn't a warning. It was an advertisement. As if to confirm it, a comment appeared at the bottom of the live feed. It was pinned, highlighted in gold. It was from a user with no name, just the same symbol from the logo, a single, weeping eye. The message was short, just a few words, but they hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs and shattering the last piece of my broken world. Thanks for the promo, Leo. We couldn't have done it without you. The tablet slipped from my nerveless fingers. It hit the floor with a soft, final thud. The live feed of the girl in her new apartment, so blissfully unaware of the thousands of eyes now locked on her, continued to play in the silent room.